Call this meeting to order. We are going to start with public comment, but first, the first item on the agenda is the roll call. I would ask to take note that everyone is in attendance except for Marlene Batista or Jay Gross. Marlene is expected momentarily. The second item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're going to go right into the public comment. If there are people on the WebEx, if you could just put in the chat that you'd like to speak, and we will call on you. We'll go through the people who are here in person first, or for the majority first. Again, we discussed this last night. I'd ask if you could please limit your comments on the subject that's in the resolution. There's 24 items there. That's all we're allowed to consider. So anything outside that really doesn't make sense for us to hear tonight. And we are going to continue with a 3-minute time limit. So, if you could try and keep that in mind, and I don't want to cut people off, but, just if we could get through this, we've got a lot to do. And appreciate it. So it's good to see everyone again, and thank you for coming. And so without further ado, if the first person would like to come up to the podium, and please write your name and I think, is it addressed too?
Yes.
Okay.
I put it in.
Okay.
And actually, if you could, I'm going to put the sign-in sheet on the table, so while the person is speaking, the next person can sign in, and that way we can get as many people that wish to speak up in the most effective fashion, rather than walking back and forth across the thing, so.
I missed anything?
Got a pen?
Oh, I put a pen there.
You got an extra pen?
I could have gone and gotten another one.
You're gonna need a
Here,
pen.
You don't have it.
Oh, you okay.
Here's a pen.
And by the way, the mic is hot, so.
Sorry, just gonna sneak in behind you.
Put this pen here.
Do we have any public comment? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Gerber.
Good evening, Chairman Caffarelli. Thank you for letting me speak. Bill Gerber, District 2 in the RTM. I think some of you have misjudged Fairfield to some extent. If you've lived here a long time, maybe you think the grass is greener in other large towns and cities. It is not. With regard to the RTM, I believe your conclusions were very much affected by selection bias. I objected over 3 years ago in this very room when a member of the RTM's as a member of the RTM Special Legislative Management Committee, the Strategic Planning Committee presented their finding that our citizens are generally unsatisfied with the RTM. Of course, with polls and surveys, we all know the devil's in the details. How many people were surveyed? How were the subjects chosen? What questions were they asked, and how were they asked? How were the responses interpreted? How was it all rolled up into an overall conclusion? What was the statistical strength of that result? I said at the time, in no uncertain terms, that I felt the conclusions did not sound credible. I tend to be very honest about how I feel, especially when my old CPA auditor instincts kick in with red flags. The conversation got a little heated. Regardless, the conclusion that Fairfielders are unsatisfied with the RTM was written into the draft strategic plan and then became a major talking point of this charter revision process and a rationale for looking at other forms of government. But looking back, after a few years, I feel very much vindicated for speaking my mind, even though it may not have been well received by some very smart and hardworking people. While also not scientific, I would postulate from the evidence that the public has produced during this charter revision process that the SPC's conclusions, due to whatever flaws in methodology or interpretation, missed the mark. The letters and comments from the public and from volunteers and government bodies spanning the gamut, Democrats, Republicans, independents, lifelong residents, and those who have moved here, young and the less young, have been overwhelmingly in favor of leaving the RTM alone and leaving the size of the RTM alone. This is evidence too. I would submit this evidence is probably stronger than the evidence collected by the SPC. To me, it is not fair for you to label, I'm almost done. It is not fair for you to label taking 46% of potential RTM membership away as a compromise, quote unquote. To us, net net, you are just taking away something of value to both the RTM and the town. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Scheinberg. I live on Flax Road. Mr. Chairman and members of the CRC, I want to thank each and every one of you for your public service. I am first a citizen of Fairfield, and as you all know, for over 6 years, I've been the chairman of the Fairfield Democratic Town Committee. Democratic leaders, including myself, worked many hours with the town attorney to help lead the revision to a successful outcome. We live in a democracy where we hold different opinions and respectfully advocate for different policies. That is what we as Democrats have accomplished with charter revision. I will now focus my remarks on the people's body, the RTM, the legislative branch that holds the executive branch accountable. It is part of our system of checks and balances. Why are you considering reducing the maximum size of the RTM by 46% from 56 to 30? Where is the data to support your votes to radically change the size of the RTM? RTM members represent their individual districts. 4 per district means 1 for 1,000 voters and 1 for 1,500 citizens. It is hard enough for 4 members to cover the district now. 40 will allow for a robust RTM committee system. How is it possible that less representation will be beneficial to the people of Fairfield? A very positive result of this process is that there is a broad consensus, in fact, a bipartisan coalition to advocate what good government looks like for the common good. I have read most of the emails to the CRC, and it looked like over 90% are for leaving the RTM alone. These letters are from Democrats, Republicans, and independents. I would like to quote from the few Republicans. Selectman Flynn last night, "You didn't close the deal with me on this. What is the real reason to do it for Fairfield, not the theoretical reason, but what it means for the town? Why is 30 the right number?" Bud Morton, "The CRC has not provided any serious analysis that explains why it thinks the real benefits, if any, of cutting the size of our RTM outweighs any related costs and risks." These are public letters that these people, Republicans, have submitted. Michael Hurley, "I had the benefit of serving on the RTM when it consisted of 40 and 50 members, and I believe that there was more robust debate on the body when it was bigger." Joy Shaw, "Oppose any change to our charter that would reduce the membership power authority of the RTM." Gaylord Meyer, "Effectively disempower our legislative branch from managing its own size and restrict its ability to be truly representative." Ellen Jacob, dangerous revisions to town charter. At your last meeting, before submitting the proposal to the Board of Selectmen, this move to change the size of the RTM did not even get a second to the motion to discuss it. Only last night did you start the debate. The model city charter talks about a mayor-town council form of government. It does not address a town government with an RTM. You have a chance to move the town forward with good charter revision. Then the town of Fairfield and all the people will be winners. We are one town. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. If you can, please.
I'm not going to say what I said before.
Oh, it's okay. Well, again, it is 3 minutes. So when you hear the beeper, if you could just,
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought because then it'll take even more time to wrap up. So if you could just, when you hear it, if you could try and wrap up, that'd be very helpful.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
certainly will. I
I'm
also.
not saying you're going to go long. I'm just, it's more
Okay,
of a-
everybody. I do want to say, I tried to email this, and I got bounced, so I kept trying, so that's why I'm here.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Okay, I wanted to say last night's joint meeting was fabulous. It was great. I loved it. It helped. I wish we could have seen you both together more often. And I want to thank you for listening to each other and listening to us. Really makes a huge difference. Okay, to me, back to smaller government, I think it doesn't, by the way, Ellen Jacob, Cedar Road. Okay, it doesn't mean to me less representation, especially when that representation's unpaid. It means less government overreach into our lives, less bureaucracy, less regulation, and making cuts to redundant staffing and programming. When I was in the RTM, now you're going to hear more of those stories, we had 50 members. We were very active and involved, and Michael Hurley actually served the same time. Some of you did. The attendance was good. I know finding dedicated members, very hard, and COVID did not make that job easier. So, but we're moving forward, hopefully, past COVID. But it's a chance for the good and sensible people of Fairfield, we're full of good people, to truly make a difference and to get involved and engage their neighbors in turn. Brenda isn't here tonight, but she actually saved my son when she was serving in the RTM, and she took on the mold problems in the schools. Not only did she help us and my family, but it started an entire movement to fix that problem in all the schools. So, and that was from the little old RTM. So, and I feel now it's important to work out these differences because in truth, by the time this gets on the ballot, the language will be so drastically reduced to fit in that small space that unless voters can puzzle through a complicated 71-page document in advance, most will be forced to just vote on trust or skip the item altogether. So, okay, rules of order and civility, I think your attorney Mednick had said this new section was designed to bolster public debate, but he also said there was no record of incivility at town board meetings. I've never seen them. So why does this need to be cured? What is being cured? The wording itself does not define exactly what constitutes a violation, yet it allows for enforcement. So it could have the opposite effect of repressing public discourse. Robert's Rules works. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. Go right ahead.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gerard Lanzano. I live on Bulkley Drive off Morehouse Highway. I also would like to address the issue of the RTM. I attended last night's special meeting in person, and this is like among the first times when I am personally participating in the functions of our town government, and I really enjoy it. I'd just like to say that I enjoy being a citizen of this town. And I concur with First Selectwoman Kupchak that this issue of the size of the RTM has unfortunately become very politicized. So I'd like to give everyone here right now something to think about with regards to the size of the RTM. The size of the United States Congress is currently set at 435 because the Congress of the United States decided that that's how big it would be. It's currently set by the Congressional Reapportionment Act of 1929. So if the Congress of the United States can decide how big it is, my question is, why should the RTM of our town not also have that power? Especially since the current town charter already caps the size of the RTM at 56. And as Judy will kindly remind everyone here, a few years ago, the RTM voluntarily agreed to reduce its size from 50 or so to 40. And to echo what First Selectman Flynn said last night, I don't believe that the case has been made that 30 is the magic number for the RTM. So I would like everyone on the Charter Revision Commission to consider whether the size of the RTM really should be mandated in the charter any more than it currently is, or whether that power should be left to the RTM. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Yeah. Hi.
I'll sign in after. Hi, good evening. Raini Noor, 83 Alberta Street here in Fairfield. Thanks again for opening this up for public comment tonight and allowing me to speak again, this time in person, not through WebEx. And thank you all for your hard and diligent work. I know it's not, fun and exciting and riveting and how everybody wants to spend their summer. And so I understand when fatigue does kick in at some point. And I would like to reiterate my support to keeping the power with the RTM to regulate its own body and to leave the member number as is currently self-regulated to 40, but to leave it untouched in the charter, just as was so eloquently said by the speaker ahead of me. And after having listened to yesterday's meeting, I'm heartened to hear that there is a growing consensus to leave the RTM untouched. First, Selectwoman Kupchak, Selectman Flynn, and others made it a point yesterday to highlight the importance of the town charter and that it had not been revised in many years. So I agree, and I venture to say that in order to honor the importance of our town's constitution, it would be imprudent to rush the process simply to stay within, to get the revised charter on this November's ballot. And I do believe it's more important to get the charter revision right than fitting it into a self-imposed time frame, even though it is, people want to be done, I do understand that. But please do keep your options open in that regard. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the chat, Prue?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Do we have anyone in the?
I'm going to go this way so I don't slide across.
Sharon Fasili?
Oh, and they're wondering. Does the speaker not get shown?
No, there she is.
Oh.
Oh, on the inside.
No, this is the only way they could do it.
Oh.
You can hear 'em, right?
They can hear.
They can hear, they just can't see.
Well, maybe. Can I ask for? Does the speaker get shown when they're talking?
Not on the WebEx, it'll show up on the recording.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like the webcam is just pointed at you guys.
I got it. Okay, thank you. Well,
Lucky us.
we're trying. So is there someone who wants to go next?
I think Sheriff is still.
Oh, Sharon Pastilli.
Yeah, before I start, can I just clarify how many minutes we have?
3, please.
Okay, don't start my time yet.
Okay.
You're a negative 10 seconds, Sharon.
We know your name, we know you're thankful, so just dive right in.
I just hit start on my own phone.
Okay.
Sharon Pastilli, 107 Loader Drive, and also a member of the RTM District 3. There have been no substantive reasons given for why the RTM should be decreased from 40 members to 30 members. The power of regulating the size of the RTM should remain with the RTM and not rest with the Charter Revision Commission. The public has come out in full force in favor of a 40-member body and leaving it alone, but this input has not been taken into account. Taking potential RTM membership away and the opportunity for citizens to serve is to limit democracy in town. We can't say that it's government overreach to have 40 members instead of 30, when in fact using the charter to take regulation authority away from the legislative body would be government overreach. Having 40 members results in more advocacy, more volunteerism in our town, and an opportunity for good people to truly make a difference. Our residents value their neighborhoods, their neighborhood schools. Anyone who's lived through redistricting knows how much each Fairfield neighborhood values its individuality. The RTM with its 10 districts divides the town up much the same way the neighborhood schools are aligned. Our town is very diverse, from Southport to Mill Hill to Greenfield Hills, Kings Highway, Black Rock Turnpike, Fairfield Woods, Stratfield, all very different neighborhoods with very different advocacy needs. To limit the size of the RTM is taking away democracy from the townspeople. And in the backdrop of what's going on overall in our country, there's never been a more important time to stand up for democracy. Reducing the size of the RTM, I believe, would not prevail at the ballot box, and this would potentially result in all of the revisions and valuable work of this commission being lost. Thanks so much, and I made it in under 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's great. Anything else you want to say with that last 60 seconds?
No.
All right.
Then you get an award.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. No, I would just like to thank everybody for their time, because I know that this is sort of a thankless exercise, but I do really honestly believe that taking this input in from the public, when you look at how many people have come out to support the RTM and the importance of the body to regulate itself, I'm asking you please to take that into consideration when you make these changes, because if you just sit here with hash marks and count how many people are in favor of leaving the RTM the way it is and how many are reducing, I can't count on one hand those who have said that they're in favor of reducing. So thanks for that. And, we may agree or disagree, but I do, really respect your work very much and appreciate it, on behalf of everybody in town. Thanks for everything that you've done.
Thank you, and I do appreciate you taking the time for those thoughtful comments. And we do really. I value everyone. I know it took your time out of an evening that you'd be spending with your family to come out here as well. So it is appreciated and duly noted. And we are all Fairfielders.
I only took 2 minutes out. So,
okay. Well, now we got this. I'm looking at this screen. There's a lot of people on there now, so we're going to go back to one from in the room. So. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cindy Parham, RTM District 2, Deputy Majority Leader. And I also represent Kiwanis International. I am a 35-year member of Kiwanis International, an organization that changes the world one child at a time. Not everyone has time to carve out for service organizations these days, and I respect anyone that has that time. Unlike the RTM, who I believe has 40 members carving out the time happily, carving out the time with progress. And some people will say, well, only a handful of people actually talk on those meetings. Well, a couple reasons for that. One, the meetings aren't hybrid. We don't have the freedom to be in a room such as this and feel connected to people, to look them in the eye, to necessarily feel part of the conversation. The other reason is not everyone has everything to say at every meeting. It's not important that we all speak at every meeting. I personally spend the majority of my time with my passion, senior tax relief. Anyone that knows Cindy Parham knows seniors. Those are my people. Does that mean I have to speak at every RTM meeting? No. I'm behind the scenes, speaking loud and clear for my constituents, for my seniors. We have attorneys, we have real estate agents, we have lacrosse coaches, we have grandmothers in town, all on the RTM. We are lucky because we have a great group who has carved out the time. I'm a 4-term, Drew, same, many others more than that, because we carved out the time because we love what we do. We're a growing town. As Sharon said, we're diverse. My voice may be loud on senior tax relief. Laura Carson, head of public health and safety, has gotten us to sit with the PD several times and have a dialogue. Talk about committee structure. People say the committees aren't working behind the scenes. They are. They are working. We're meeting with people in town. We're getting things done. We have a voice, 40 members of voices, and I would hate to have any of them shut down. So that's why I'm so in support of a 40-member board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Drew Georgiadis. I am RTM District 9. I want to echo what Cindy Perm just said. I have two things I want to emphasize. Number one, that we are volunteers. We take the time to get elected. We take the time to interact with our constituents. We take the time to know what their concerns are. In addition to that, we have to sit on committees. If you reduce the number of RTM members, then who knows, maybe I'll have to sit on 2 committees, and then maybe I might not have the time to run. So by having 40 members, the committees get the amount of people they need, the amount of time the volunteers need to allocate in their life to the RTM is manageable. And we want as many people in this town to participate in local government as possible. The other thing I want to point out with 40 versus 30 is that some of the things that we pass need a 2/3 majority. And by changing the number from 40 to 30, it really impacts when we might have 2/3, how much more difficult it might to get to 2/3. So 40 is a good number. I think it creates a balance, and it doesn't restrict that 2/3 number to the point where you will never be able to reach 2/3 because of the reduced number of the RTM members. It's just a ratio thing. I'm sure you can all do the math. So I really enjoy my time on the RTM. I am one of the people that speak. You've probably heard me. But just because I speak does not mean that I have more important things to say than some of my other members that don't speak. So it's all comfort, and again, I am highly supportive that the RTM is self-regulatory. They know what's going on. They know the sort of when the pushback will be is if too much time for a volunteer will reduce the number of people that have the time to serve on the RTM, and we want a wide, varied membership. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take the next speaker from the WebEx, Matthew Halleck, is that it?
Matthew Halleck.
Hi, I'm right here. Hi, thank you very much for taking me.
Thank you for being here.
I do appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. I'm here speaking, I'm sort of echoing the first speaker in that I don't want to water down and limit the number of RTM just because it waters down the democracy and leads to more of an autocracy by consolidating power, giving more power to the first select person. And nothing against her, and she's doing a fine job, but just having the decisions that she can make just because she can say yay or nay to something just because there's not the appropriate checks and balances, because she can. And her predecessor, who did a lot of things that were not good for Fairfield, and our predecessor's predecessor, and even the one before that, Mephistopheles or whatever his name was, doing things that, when you have that autocracy, it's not good for the town overall. So I just want whatever we can do to have as much democracy and representation for the people. And for that reason, I would advocate keeping 40 members of the RTM.
Thank you very much for being here. The next person in the room with us who wants to speak, please.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for having us tonight. And as always, and you certainly deserve it, I want to thank the members of this commission for their efforts and the long hours of work executing your charge. So my name is Elizabeth Zesma, by the way. I live at 160 Fairfield Woods Road. I am on the RTM as the majority leader, and I serve from District 4. And I do want to say before I conclude my own remarks that the RTM speakers tonight, really remind me of why I love our caucus and the entire body. So I want to speak to you in the capacity of the majority leader of the RTM. Since the size of our body is under consideration, I'm a little disappointed that those who advocate for reducing it have not reached out from my perspective. Having this narrative driven in part by only one side of RTM leadership, currently in the minority, is neither efficient nor is it effective. Two issues repeatedly cited as reasons to reduce. No clear explanation or justification has been offered after months of debate and countless requests to leave the body at its current size. As many of you already know, but it is worth repeating, the RTM is the town's legislative body with the power to enact and change ordinances, to provide final votes for contracts and final approval of board and commission appointments. We approve bonding and other expenditures. We are the last body to vote on the town budget, with the power to cut with a simple majority or to add money with a supermajority. We also have the right to add standing committees and create temporary committees for specific purposes, and must maintain our ability to do so. A need for additional RTM committees is anticipated, including the need to split one of the committees into two, but cannot occur with just 30 members. There is simply no rational justification to reduce the cap by 46% from 56 to 30, especially with the population growth Fairfield has experienced. And again, I'll echo other words spoken here, regardless of how many people speak during a meeting, and it is my intention to streamline and economize on the time it takes to conduct our public business without sacrificing transparency and thoroughness. Rest assured, we are an army of hardworking individuals, all of whom contribute to the tasks required to analyze the matters before us and obtain all critical info in order to make decisions and approve expenditures. We do not rubber stamp, and we do not take shortcuts. To document the division of tasks and the time it takes to do our due diligence would surprise many who assume we only spend a few hours a month attending our meetings. Not having the resources to do this will cost the town not only in taxpayer dollars, but the quality of both town and government services. In short, our job is to govern and to act as a check and balance on the executive branch. Much like the states' rights debate we hear a lot about today, we are currently empowered by the existing charter to determine our size rather than have the heavy hand of the executive via charter constraints make this decision for us, with or without what they feel is appropriate justification. This is disempowering not only this branch of our town government, but the people we represent. I am proud to lead a caucus of dedicated and extraordinarily talented and engaged leaders. We are fortunate to attract a lot of highly competent members of the public with a desire to serve and to govern. This is reflected in the numerous ordinances our caucus has produced over just the last several terms, the millions we have saved the town with our fiscal oversight, and the community engagement we carry out to solve problems and improve the quality of life. And we do also, our ordinances, I do want to say, we always invite our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. All of this takes right-sized human capital. Asking residents to do with less representation without being able to explain how fewer people to do the work involved is somehow better for them is a fool's errand, one that I do not intend to run. On behalf of my caucus, I would ask the CRC to abandon the issue of using a heavy hand to deprive us of the powers bestowed on us to determine our own needs. This authority belongs in our hands.
Okay, thank you very much. What's that? Who is next? And again, when you hear the beeper go off, if you could just, kind of wrap up. I don't want to interrupt you, but we do have a lot of people.
Right. I'm Cindy Wapnitsky, 41 Valley View Place. I've two things to say. If you want to reduce the number of RTM members from 40 to 30. You really owe it to the public to give us a reason, a justification, which we have not had. So it seems to me like when my mother used to say, put a sweater on because I'm cold, okay? That's what you're doing. And the other thing is, I've been listening to what everyone has to say and talking about representation. And when I hear about diminished representation, I always think about the most vulnerable people who are amongst us, who really and truly depend upon rational voices to help them and to represent them. And by doing what you want to do, those are the people who will suffer the most. Personally, my life will go on. But there are some people, you really have to think about these people every single day who are depending upon people like Cindy and Liz and Bill and the rest of you, regardless of what party you are in. They trust you, and you cannot pull this out from under the rug from the most underserved people in our community who need you the most.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We want to take someone from the, let's see here, Kathy Braun.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Driving.
Yes, yeah, as long as are you safe where you are? I mean, we don't want you to be.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. So I sent a letter. You probably didn't get a chance to look at it yet. I'll very, very briefly summarize it. The time frame issue, I see the RTM as being kind of a compromise, or some kind of a sequela of the whole discussion the CRC had about changing the form of government from RTM, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, to mayor, manager, town council. So that was rejected. That was given up for a few reasons, one of which was some CRC members said there wasn't time. So I believe the RTM issue is the only issue really before you now that was sort of put out there because of the lack of time that the CRC was given. So I would like to suggest two potential options to resolve that. I know that there was a problem in that the resolution that you passed last August did not include the time frame as it was supposed to. And it was a short time frame, shorter than the statute said. This whole process could take 3 years, but it's being kind of squished into 1 year to get into this election. And actually, it could have gone into next election year. But my suggestion is, because the RTM is kind of the only major controversial issue that was put out there this way, possibly because of the lack of time to fully flesh it out and vet it out and get the outreach and get the support, perhaps you can either let your decision extend beyond August 7th. That would enable you to still make a choice of putting it on the following year's election. It has to be within 15 months of that election day. Or perhaps just take the RTM off and accept the fact that there simply wasn't the time to do it and bring it up at another time. I think it might be an ad hoc committee somewhere in the new charter that could review it with more time. That's a suggestion I would make. I echo everyone else's sentiments about the RTM. I served as secretary term when there were 50. We did a lot of extra work for our constituents. Couldn't have done it if it was smaller. But I have another issue that I consider equally important. Last night, this mediation and resolution clause is being added as if it's something the first select person always has. I don't agree with that. The RTM, first of all, is not under or even in the same branch of government. The first select person should have no ability to mediate any difference between the RTM and any other town body. I also don't believe the first select person should have any ability to mediate or resolve. I know you're taking out the word resolve, but even mediate differences between other town bodies. I was told by somebody who worked conservation years ago that conservation actually sued zoning at some point a couple decades ago. That goes to court, and that's where it belongs. It's not any public official area to go in and try to mediate two other independent bodies that are carrying out state law. I don't think mediation belongs there at all. And one last comment about the DPW director. This is not the time to reduce their standards. We've had acting or interim DPW heads for 3 years. We need to recruit somebody that falls under our current charter and not reduce the requirement. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. The next person in the room.
Tons of emails today on that.
And I don't know if Kathy's still there. We did see her email, and I think Jim responded to it as well.
And Nancy.
Hi, everyone. Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Hill Road. I'm also the chair of the Board of Education. I spoke before you and shared the advice of our attorney about some of the language regarding the contracts and approval of the contracts by the Board of Selectmen. From the meeting last night, it sounds like that will be addressed, so I want to thank you for your consideration. Thank Attorney Mednick and Attorney Baldwin for meeting with our attorney. I think it's important that this commission and the next charter respects the roles and responsibilities of all town bodies. Listening to everyone speak about the RTM, as chair of the Board of Ed, I think I'm in the unique position. I report in front of every town body multiple times per year. And as tempting as it is to think of having to answer questions from 10 less people, I have to say that each question, I learn something about a different part of town. We get public comment at a Board of Ed meeting, but very often it's the same people, and it's during the times that we're in front of other town bodies that we hear the public's voice. So I would encourage you to keep the number as is, not reduce it. I think it adds value. It is the cornerstone of our democracy. Just thinking more about, totally switching gears again, last night there was some talk about the capital planning budget, keeping it flexible, working it into the regular budget schedule. From the Board of Ed side, our capital planning is a little bit different. A lot of our work needs to be done over the summer. We need approvals earlier. Getting approvals in, May, not helpful when we have to go out to bid, especially since we're going through town purchasing. There's been, some delays on that end. So I would encourage you to keep flexibility there. The waterfall, the workshop that was previously done in September and October, that seemed to work with us. If you want to be flexible, I would just ask for consideration on Board of Ed projects being approved earlier. So, thank you.
All right. Who is next on that? Kathleen Griffin, please. 3 minutes. I have?
She's just commented on it. She's right next after Kathleen.
Okay.
She put her name back in, so you'll get to her.
Yeah, sorry about that. I
That's
missed.
okay. Can you hear me?
I can. Who am I hearing?
Kathleen, Mark can go first if she's ready. I'm happy to defer to her.
I think that as long as
Go
you're.
ahead, Kathleen. Go ahead. Okay, so Kathleen Griffin, 15 Stony Brook Road. I'm going to speak to two issues. Quickly, 12.26D, item number 12. I sent a detailed explanation earlier today on why I'm suggesting this. Hopefully you received it. But in short, please consider the following for filling vacancies on the Board of Selectmen. Number one, follow state statute for filling the vacancy between municipal elections, thereby allowing the petition for a special election if called for by the voters. And number two, put the seat back on the ballot at the next municipal election, regardless of whether there's a special election or not. I think that's the simplest, cleanest, and fairest way to address the issue. Having language unique to Fairfield just seems to complicate things. And then I also want to speak to item number 16, which is the town administrator. Part A, delineation of duties. I sent a list of suggested duties earlier today. I ask that you consider that list and the ones provided by Attorney Mednick when drafting the town administrator's duties. You are not asked to draft any duties for the chief of staff, so I think it's particularly important that you draft these with intention. Regarding the change of the title, I'll repeat what I've said previously. I believe the town administrator is more appropriate and better suited title for our community. It sounds professional yet approachable and clearly reflects the primary responsibility of the job to administer the business of the town. Houston towns like Darien, Greenwich, Wilton, and Weston. Chief Administrative Officer sounds corporate, somewhat vague, and is more often used in municipalities with mayors and councils like Bridgeport, Hartford, and Stratford. It may just come down to marketing, but now that the position will be codified in our charter, I think you should select a title that's appropriate and well-suited for Fairfield. And I believe that town administrator is the right choice. And then codifying the reporting obligation, I ask you consider adding language requiring the town administrator to be present and on the agenda at all Board of Selectmen meetings and to provide a town administrator's report. This would ensure that both the board and the public have a good sense of the work that this professional is performing and any administrative challenges the town may be facing. Would also provide board members the opportunity to ask questions, seek advice, and engage in the sharing of thoughts and ideas on a regular and consistent basis. In summary, I'm disappointed that the Board of Selectmen will not have the opportunity to vote on who's hired for this position, but I'm hopeful that if you codify both the definition of the town administrator's duties and regular reporting, that this commission will have taken an important step towards ensuring there is professional, accountable, and apolitical management in our town government. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we want to go back in the room here? Does someone else want to speak?
Into my spam, which hardly ever happens.
How are you doing tonight?
Good. Do I need to press something or?
No, you're
Okay.
good.
My name is Matthew McInnes. I live at 301 Saskowell Road. I want to talk about two specific things. Firstly is the membership in the RTM. I think that keeping the RTM at 40 members allows for the people of Fairfield to have an adequate voice in their town government. And I think that the fact that over the past few months, this board has received countless emails and public comment advocating for keeping the RTM the way it is displays that this is an issue that the people are passionate about, and I feel like it shows that keeping the RTM at 40 members is what the general consensus is. I also want to speak in opposition to the various consolidations of power into the executive branch of the Fairfield government. I think that the current systems of how we pass our budgets and how the different boards interact with each other work incredibly well, and I think that it adds debate and it allows the different boards elected by the Fairfield people to adequately express what the people want. And I think that every single person on this board should ask themselves whether or not a 30-member RTM helps the people of Fairfield. And I think that if any of you believe that the answer is no, you shouldn't pass that to go on to the people of Fairfield, because I feel like that could waste time and waste valuable resources passing forth something that we know will not pass in an actual referendum vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Next, this is what happened, Prue, when I tried to take over your responsibility. So who is next? We're going to, Marcy, yeah. Apologies,
you.
Marcy. But we want,
All right, great. What?
You have 3 minutes. We're eager to hear from you. Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Hi, I'm Marcy Sawyer, Deputy Moderator of the RTM, currently serving my 3rd term, but I speak for myself, other members. I'm speaking today to request that you remove the proposed changes to the charter in regards to the size of the RTM. Some might laugh at what I'm about to say, but I'm really not a political person. I never thought I would be involved in town politics 6 years ago. 11 years ago, I couldn't even tell you what the RTM was. Personally, I learned the RTM in 2012 when my neighborhood was experiencing some issues with a builder wanting to overdevelop the neighborhood. That's when I learned part of the value of RTM. Fast forward to 2017, when I was asked to run for a position on the RTM. Why would a regular PTA serving mom want to be on a political body? What a crazy thought. And I almost said no on the spot. In retrospect, I can say that I'm glad that I didn't, and that yes, a regular PTA mom is the perfect person to be on the RTM. Because in essence, the honor of being on the RTM is the fact that I'm representing all those regular, ordinary people. Some of them might not even know I exist because I'm still just a regular, ordinary mom. But from the day I was elected, I swore to represent everybody. I think representation is important. And the more members we have on the body, the more backgrounds and skills we can accumulate, which is so important. I think saying that not all 40 members are involved by saying that they don't speak is really not a good portrayal. I don't think I said a word at an RTM meeting my first term. That didn't mean I wasn't a participating member of the body. That first term, I was interacting with constituents, listening to their concerns, and following up to address them. Some issues involved paving, our local park, the Stratfield Four Corners. I was also listening to my RTM colleagues and learning how Fairfield's government works. And while Fairfield's government might at times be a bit complicated, that doesn't mean that it's bad. Over the past 5 years, my RTM and I have received many emails from our constituents, and it would be hard to address them all with only 3 members. By having 4 members per district, we are able to share the work and share our knowledge. By cutting the RTM size, you are cutting representation. I'm also chair of the Education and Recreation Committee of the RTM. I believe that the committee needs to be divided between education and recreation. There are many changes in both those areas. But if we cut the amount of RTM members, there's no way we could feasibly. I have heard no justified reason why lowering the maximum amount of members in the charter would be beneficial. If we paid our RTM members, then the budget may be a valid point. But we don't pay our RTM members, and we don't have a budget. So why would Fairfield consider decreasing representation with no net gain? Please do not cut the maximum amount of members on the RTM, and thank you. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that was good.
You get the award ahead of Sharon.
Yeah. And we're glad a PTA mom is involved in town politics, so good for you. Thank you. Next.
Thank you.
Anybody in the room still want to, have we missed anyone? It is.
But we're in person.
Yeah, okay.
Not political, I'm a member of the board.
It's all right.
But I really appreciate all of the hard work that everybody does all the time. All of you. I really appreciate all of you very much. My name's Cynthia McDonald. I live at 1894 Cross Highway. My husband and I have been members and residents of Fairfield for over 10 years. I'm trying to pay attention. I've read everything that I can come up with, and I don't understand what's going on. Where's the problem? What is the problem? What is so bad about 40 members? I don't get it. And I don't understand why consolidation of power is a good idea. I've read it, I've looked over it a million times, I've read everything I can find, I've listened to all of the people who I really respect as experts, and I'm not one. But I don't think you guys have proven your case. I don't see the problem. Show me the problem before you solve something that I don't see a problem on. And I'm really kind of disappointed because I appreciate the representation that the RTM gives us. And I think we need checks and balances more now than ever. And consolidating the checks and balances into one power source doesn't make any sense to me. It's totally against democracy. And this is a bad time to go against democracy. And I also think that especially seeing all of the Republicans, and okay, I'm a Democrat, but I have lots of Republicans in my family and everyone. Nobody's like, I don't see like division on this. I see a lot of people that are saying, you know, they don't get it either. I see unaffiliated, independents, Republicans, and Democrats not understanding why we're doing this, and I just don't see the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on WebEx, Prue? I don't see anyone, but
It doesn't look like it, no.
how about in the room? Sure, go ahead. This is why we're here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Emma Kennelly. I live at Edgewood Place. I want to thank you guys for all the hard work you put in. That's part of why I wanted to talk, because I don't want it all to go to waste. The impression I've gotten just from showing up to a few of these meetings is that people like a lot of the changes. It's been a long time since we've updated the charter. It seems like it needs it. But people are going to vote it down if you leave in the thing about the RTM. So it feels like it's not, there's been no good reason to cap it at 30 members. So why throw out all of your hard work if that's going to be the hill that people are going to die on? So that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. It's nice. All right, so we're going to close the public comment section unless there is anyone else on WebEx or in the room that decided.
Oh, wait, there is some, VW says, I would like to speak if time allows.
Time is allowing.
Oh, and Carol Waxman, sorry.
Oh, boy. We've got, okay.
Maybe they could all put their names in the chat.
So it would be Carol and then VW. I'm not sure who VW is.
VW is, well, it would be Carol first, and then anyone else on WebEx, if you could put your name in now so that we could see that you're in order to speak or in line to speak. Carol, are you there? Carol Wax. Yeah.
My name is Carol Waxman. I am a resident, a voter, unaffiliated. I have not served in any of Fairfield government, but I feel that more residents should be heard and should speak up. I feel that a lot of the government's positions have been stated, but not the side of the residents. I worry about the reduction of the RTM. I've served in an RTM in Westport for 8 years. It was unaffiliated and nonpartisan, rather. And as an unaffiliated person, I found it easy to work with other people of different political persuasions. I would hate to see you reduce the RTM. I have spoken to not only the RTM members of my representatives in my district, but I've called others who are on committees that I realize deal with the budget. I know that I'm not the only resident who speaks up. The problem with an RTM that is based on partisan affiliation is that you don't go to the general meeting because everything is decided in a caucus. And that I find very offensive, because I would like to speak to everyone, because I feel this is a diverse community, and my interest may be only my side of town. I worry about the beach and about erosion. I worry about the other parts of town too, and many other residents may as well. I hope you will not get rid of the RTM. I would love to see someone in office who brought back the conservation department and made it an important part. I would not like to see you hiring a public works director who does not have a degree. I feel that I worked in a town where they did have one with a good degree. It adds a lot to the protection. We need but before I close, I really would like to thank the volunteers who have served on this committee. I believe you've given nobly to it and very generously. But I feel if you are tired and you want to end it, perhaps other members from the community should be put on it, and it should go for a full length of time so that more residents can hear.
I second
Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for all you've done.
All right, well, thank you. Carol Waxman with the second shift suggestion. We have Snickers
Don't
tonight.
laugh.
No, I'm not laughing. I just, we have the energy and vigor to keep going. So we're going.
Snickers.
I'm not laughing at you. I do appreciate your comments, and they are taken to, into account. And I do appreciate you taking the time.
I didn't take it as a offense. Thank you.
Good. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Well, then next we're going to VW, who is Valerie Wilkie. And then we're getting more stragglers here.
Hello?
Yep. Hi.
Hi, Valerie Wilkie. I'm at 130 Curtis Terrace. I have not been very active in town government at all, but I feel very strongly about maintaining the number of RTM representatives that we currently have. I know my representatives. I trust my representatives. I would be quite saddened to see the size of the RTM reduced. I think there's been a lot of eloquence expressed tonight, people who have said things that I couldn't even begin to put into words, but I agree and support the comments that they've made tonight, and I appreciate that you take into account my voice as an average citizen in Fairfield to say I don't want to reduce the size of the RTM. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and comments tonight. The next speaker, Laura Carson.
Hi, how are you? This is Laura Carson.
Hi, good to see you.
District 4. Hi, I would be there in person, but I'm sick, so I'm speaking in my illness.
We're happy to see you at home.
I'll be very short. It just appears to me, through all these meetings, there has been a ton of people advocating for keeping the RTM as it is, and I've seen really nobody expressing any reason to, on the other side, to say reduce it. And I'm just asking you how you could, in good faith, keep this on the part of the revision to the RTM when you've seen so many passionate, decent, civil-speaking people eloquently expressing their desire to keep the RTM the way it is. So I can't fathom that this could actually go forward with so many people speaking in favor of keeping the RTM. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you for your time and hope you feel better. Anyone else on WebEx? It looks like there's no one else in the chat. And anyone else have a change of heart in this room? I think we have heard from almost everyone. All right, well, good. We're going to close the public comment then. Again, thank you all for taking the time, not just tonight, but over the course of this whole endeavor. So it is helpful, and I do appreciate seeing you and hearing from you. So it's good. We're going to take a quick break before we get into the deliberations tonight. So just bless you. So we will resume in 5 minutes right here for the deliberations. about ready. I mean, I like the education tonight, too. I'm looking, you know, on the number of members of Congress, how they're set. It's helpful. All right, so we're going to call the meeting back to order and go to the next agenda item, which would be deliberation of the resolution submitted to the Charter Revision Commission by the Board of Selectmen that we went over last night during the conferral meeting. So we will go again in the same order, items 1 through 24. I think, you know, we had most of our answers, questions answered, rather. And if we can come to a consensus on some language or an action item that we could give to Attorney Mednick so that he can get a revised draft of the charter to us for a vote on Monday. I asked Attorney Mednick to work with, you know, speed and diligence to see if we can't get that before, you know, maybe the weekend so that we have some time to look at it before a final vote. But to be clear, I would like to, you know, I don't know if we want to call them, we're gonna get a consensus on each item so that he can draft. So I'd like it all to be unanimous if possible. So let's see how it goes. Is there any comments from the commissioners before we start? Pam?
I would just ask that if we could just move the 40 to 30 thing to the end, since I think that'll take up the most conversation.
Is there any objection to that? Okay. All right, so number 1. It was review the definitions, including but not limited to the definitions of board and commission, contract, ordinance, and regulation, adding a definition for vacancy and appointing authority.
Can we go through it?
Yes, please.
No, go ahead.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, members. It's so nice to be in a room working with you, rolling our sleeves up here on a hot summer night. So there were a few issues that we took a look at in this process based on a number of comments from the public. And I just want to point out for the record, from a part of my methodology, is right through today, and in fact, I will continue to work on errata as long as we get public comments in. I look at every public comment and try to fix things if there is something that needs to be fixed. And Ms. Ewing's here, I think she knows that I've listened to her, and there's others in the audience that I've listened to as well throughout this process that this commission's listened to, and will continue until the very day it gets approved by the Board of Selectmen. So the issues here were, there were some questions raised about boards and commissions. I'll talk about that a little bit later with regard to task forces, which will be addressed a little later in the charter. But there were no real issues. When we did the consolidation, we came up with a defined term. As opposed to listing everything that falls into this defined term, we just use the term boards and commissions. The only exceptions are these other entities, called advisory committees, task forces, and other entities created by appointing authorities for limited duration, purposes, or scope. You will see in the document that I'm recommending that we not have the single office requirement apply to those entities. If you serve on an entity of limited jurisdiction, such as a charter commission or a task force, that provision of the charter will not apply to you as it would apply to a member of boards and commissions. So that's not addressed right here. You'll see it later in the document, but that was the issue that we looked at that was raised by public comment, and that's the way that I propose resolving it. The issue of contract, we're deleting the phrase. I think I want. Okay, thank you. The issue of contract, we're recommending deletion of the clause including the Board of Education. It's really redundant, frankly, and unnecessary in the definition. On the definitions of hearing and public hearing, there was a request to discuss ordinance. We think that the ordinance term is used properly. One of the concerns with the term ordinance was the use of the word regulation, lowercase r, in the definition. And both the town attorney and I looked at it, and what we ended up what we would like to recommend is that we leave the term regulation in. It's a normal definition of ordinance, but lowercase r, not a big R regulation that is an actual mini ordinance. And we think the definition works. And what we did is I did a run through the document, and I left capital R's in the properly capital R regulations, which are a form of law. And where we're using the term regulation in other sense, it's a lowercase r. And I think that you'll see in the draft that that's pretty consistent. A question was raised actually in the last week or so by a member of the RTM, and I appreciate the question, regarding current notice requirements for the RTM. There was a distinction between the current notice requirements in the current charter and the way that it was parsed down in this document. And the main reason for the parsing down of the definition in the section is we now have these definitions, public notice and meeting or hearing notice. By reviewing that comment and that question, it got me to look at the definitions a little more carefully, and you will see I'm making a couple of changes to make clear what the town clerk's function is. There was one place where the term clerk was not there, and I fixed that to make sure it was the town clerk and not just the town. Also made it clear that her notice obligations are mandatory requirements, and those are now clear in both subsection 15 and 17. You'll still see the parse down provisions in the RTM section. I did add in the RTM section that if they want to have their own stricter standard of notice, because right now they have a 5-day notice requirement. If they wanted to have their own stricter standard, they could do it either by ordinance or by rule. But that the general notice provisions are at the beginning of the document, and they allow for boards, commissions, the RTM is a legislative body, to establish their own rules, and their rules can be stricter than the state statute or the charter provisions. So I want to thank that RTM member for raising the issue. I think it was a useful issue to raise. That's all I have on definitions. Oh, there's one other question on definitions, and the town attorney and I talked about this, and we both went back and forth on this. It was the definition of appointing authority. Somebody had raised the question that we should define it. It is defined, but it's a mini definition. It's one of the exceptions in the document that when you get to section, let's see if I can find it quickly here, but when you get to the section where you're talking about appointments, it's defined within that paragraph, but it's virtually not used anywhere else. So there's a parenthetical defining the term appointing authority. If you really want me to put it in the front of the document, I can, but since it was only really used in that one place and then one other place in the charter, I thought anybody reading the document would understand that that's a defined term.
And we'll change the capitalization on
it changes
within that section.
It changes within that, yeah, because it's defined as, yeah, it'll be capitalized, yeah.
So I think that's in 6.4A.
There you go, yep.
The members were, in the middle of the paragraph.
Okay.
Says not town official which possesses the authority to make an appointment, paren, appointing authority.
Yep. And it will be used in the document. I mean, you know, if you want, I can move it forward. It's, I'll leave that up to you to decide, but it's kind of a defined term as it is. I think that's it. Counselor, you know anything?
Okay.
Thanks, Steve, for that update. So when you just said a few minutes ago that you added language to the RDM section that essentially says they can, they want to have a stricter rule or so on and so forth.
I'm recommending that we add language.
It's not here
No,
yet.
you'll see it.
Okay.
If you're okay with it, you'll see it in the next draft.
That's all right. Just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so vacancy, we decide we don't need the
Sorry.
definition.
Correct.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think
And
just
it's all
clarify the lowercase.
Yeah, it's all lowercase.
And then back on the advisory committees, there's a couple of sections that don't apply to them. And I just want we're conscious of that. If I'm reading this right, the beginning, civility and standard of conduct,
I do have a note there that I thought I would discuss when we got to it, but I have.
Okay, fine. If you want to wait till we get there, fine.
Those were raised,
Yep.
the vice chair has been very conscientious, by the way, throughout this
Yeah,
entire
he is.
process.
There's not much gets by him.
Yeah, no, he's been great. So if I miss one as we go through it, but I have it sequentially.
Fine, if we're going to do it when we get there, fine.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
I'm sorry. Real quick, on that commission, the board or commission, I saw, and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear from you. I saw an email where there was a concern that these advisory committees and task forces, for some reason, they're not subject to like Robert's rules or something like that. But can you just clarify
We'll
that?
discuss that in a minute, because I.
Oh, I'm
that's
sorry.
the issue the vice chair.
Is that what you just said too?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say it clearly.
He wasn't as, we talked in code.
I'm sorry.
That's the difference, but
Maybe I
it's the same issue.
should pay attention a little bit more. Okay, thanks, sorry.
No.
We have the same decoder rings down here, so, that's,
I missed that too.
So in terms of action items where you need from the commission to go ahead and draft, what can you, I know you listed them out, but.
basically, it's cleaning up the definition of contract. It's making a few modifications in the notice and public notice provisions pertaining to the responsibilities of the town clerk. And of course, the decision not to move forward with a separate definition on appointing authority and not to define vacancy.
Vacancy. Okay, so let's go through those one by one. The contract, how does everyone feel about that? Good. Any objection? Okay. Go ahead with that, please. The notice, how does everyone feel about that?
Good.
You have to see it, but good.
Okay, good. And then how does everyone feel about not touching the appointing authority and vacancy? Okay. Now, I do think we missed one thing. We were going to remove a parenthetical on the Board of Ed in
Oh.
contracts.
I did talk about it, but we just missed it again. Well,
Okay.
it's in the definition of contract, that's
Yeah.
what I did.
Oh, okay, got it, right.
I
okay.
deleted that,
Perfect.
yeah. Anything else?
Number 2.
And obviously, just for my clarification and all of ours and the public's, we're going to get a document on Monday, and that's what
You'll
we're going to
have
vote.
before Monday.
Well, before Monday. So if there's something we saying here now, yes, we want to go in that direction, but we see something in the document
Yeah.
that's been good, then we're going to, you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
you're not bound to it
Not
if it's
bound
not.
by it.
My underlines may be squiggly, and you may not like that, or something like that, I get it. Yeah.
I just want to be able to tell him
I
the
get it.
direction to go,
Yeah.
and then we'll see.
Am
Is
I-
there, and is there, let me just I'm going to say this for our benefit. When you do what you're doing in this document, to me, it would be easier just to get the pages where there's changes instead of the whole, do you know what I'm saying? Can you give it to us that way?
Well, at this stage, we're in the final stages of the document. I mean, I could.
All right, that's fine. I don't want to, I'm
Early
just,
on, if you may recall, as we were going through and changing sections, you were just
I
looking
get
at
it.
sections. But
Just-
now we're at a stage where we're
All right.
looking at the whole document.
if you,
Bookmark it or something like that.
in other words, just like when you send it to us after we're done discussing, just if you can like itemize the sections that we've discussed tonight, so
But if
what I-
follow, this is easy. If you follow the recommendations, you'll see.
yeah,
that
you're right,
there's
okay.
balloons on the
Gotcha.
side of each one. I was
All
trying
right,
to make it-
all right,
no, I don't know what
I'm
else
not
I
going to
could do.
belabor it, I'm just,
I can't put Post-its on.
no, I get
You're
it.
going to red line against the transmittal, the document that was sent to the BOS.
Correct.
So we'll see every change, every type, everything will be.
Oh, to the document we sent to them in,
This one, 13 June.
yes, that's what, I will do that, if you like. Yeah,
Yes,
I'd be
that
happy to
way
do
we
that.
can see everything
Now we
that's been
see
done
everything
since the
since
last time we
did it.
officially.
Absolutely.
All right.
Happy to do that.
Thanks.
Let me make a note on that.
No, it's good. Yeah.
So you won't have comments on the side of some of those, but my hope is
I
tomorrow
don't-
to have this out to you.
Yeah, I mean, to me, well, personally, I don't, the comments, unless it's kind of clearly something that was added on, aren't as important. It's just so it's marked and we can. double
Yeah,
check.
it'll be marked. That's easy, that's very easy to do. So the next section that we had discussion in, part of item one? No, it's not.
The
Oh,
election-
we have a decision to make, I'm sorry, in 1.48, it's separate, on the issue of who is an elected town official.
That's number 2.
Yeah, number
Number
two.
two.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead. But it's item number 2, and so you folks need to decide what to do about that. The issue is, should the RTM be included within the definition of elected town official?
Pam?
Well, I know it's a definition without a distinction or whatever, however you put it. But we overwhelmingly heard from the public about how sacrosanct and different the RTM is, and I personally just think it should stay that way.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we try to change that now. The law of unintended consequences will apply. So I wouldn't want to make that big change.
So, I don't disagree, and I don't think there's a reason. If someone tells me a reason why they should be included in the definition, then I would be okay maybe looking at it, but I don't know if we got a real reason. And from a legal standpoint, that there's no legal reason why they have to be included in the definition, as far as I can see. So that's what I would say.
So does anyone want to include the RTM as written within the definition of as an elected town official? Well, actually, before we go to that, so Steve, I think that one of the concerns last night was that they have the same rights as elected officials. It is just a distinction in kind of the stylistic manner of how the charter and the RTM is.
Historically, and it's interesting, Jim will tell you, I actually made a mistake earlier in the process when I was doing the conversion of putting them in the definition of elected town official, because I was surprised that they weren't in the definition of that. But then again, I started looking at other RTM towns and town meeting towns, and historically, they are not. Historically, they are a separate and distinct entity. They are the legislative body. They're one of two entities, and I've told you this before, and I'll tell you one last time, that there's only two requirements in a charter: that you have a chief executive, and you have a first select person, and you have a legislative body, your RTM, period. Those are the only two requirements. It gives them all the status that they need. And I made a mistake because I work a lot with larger cities and towns where they are not historically linked to the town meeting. In fact, one of the errors that was made, one of the things I left out of the draft, was a provision, obscure provision that I didn't think was really necessary, but I think some people did, that gives the moderator of the RTM the moderator authority of a town meeting moderator. I don't think it's necessary statutorily, but there was a big deal made about it, and so that historic link is very important. And I did not truly understand that. Your good corporation counsel told me the history, and he was right. So.
Well, I think that's helpful for us and for the public to understand that they have the same rights as elected officials, that this does not take away from that. So, does anyone want to include them as an elected town official as a definition? Okay, so we are going to decline to act on number 2.
But I have one additional comment. There's a couple places in the document where it might help to say "and RTM," which I put in, which is maybe in the errata.
Did you point those out in your
Yes.
errata? Then if that's the case, so they're so noted.
I think they really are
Please
errata.
double check it when you get the documents from me.
Is that in the document that you sent?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Number 3, Article 1, generally, review all rules of order and civility, open meetings, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first one, rules of order and civility.
So this is one of the questions, the only question we had here is, I'm not sure what was resolved. I don't think there was much discussion on these items last night on rules of order and civility, but the vice chair raised the issues to whether or not the rules of order and civility should apply to committees, task forces, and other entities of that nature. And if you ask me for my opinion would be yes, they should. be covered by that, but they right now are not, because they're not included in the definitions of boards and commissions. So so if you want to include them, we should specifically delineate that.
Yeah, just to explain, when I was reading through this for the boards and commission definition, I did notice there are certain places that, just because I think it was a drafting thing, they did not get included, but I think we would want to put them in. The other thing, I do like this section. I've heard people talk about it. I've read it carefully. I don't think it's really trying to suppress anything. If everybody did it, it would be illegal, just to suppress free speech. I'll take it from one perspective I haven't heard. I was a board chairman once. You don't get a lot of training to be a board chairman, and having something in the document you can read and just kind of lays out, oh, okay, this is sort of what we can do and all that, in case you get in that unfortunate circumstances where things start happening, even though a lot of this is in statute or applied and all that in Roberts. So actually, I kind of liked it, just thinking it from that point of view.
Any other comments on this? So, to include it with boards and commissions, does anyone have an objection to that? All right, so we'd like to do that as the vice chair pointed out. And obviously keep the rules of order and civility in, if we're doing that. Right. Is there objection to keeping the rules of order and civility in? No. Okay. And the open meetings.
Can I just raise one issue?
Please.
And the vice chair did not raise this, and I think there's a reason why he didn't. I just want to confirm. They're not included in standards of conduct either. I'm not sure you necessarily want them, need to have them.
I was curious in your opinion on that.
Yeah.
Because it is a different relationship, and they're not permanent boards.
They're
and
not
so
making regulatory
all the
decisions, they're making policy
self-interest
decisions.
stuff, they're not dealing with
Yeah.
money, they're not making those decisions.
I agree if you went, I agree with
Yeah.
that analysis.
I would
I
agree
just
with
wanted
you.
to raise it since we were discussing the issue. All right. I did lowercase presiding officer, it's not a defined term, just want to make that for the record, you'll see that as you go through the document. In 1.7, on public meetings and public records and open meetings, this is a consolidation. These were in two different places and actually a third place. Somebody brought to our attention, I think the Corporation Council, from his marathon sessions with members of the member of the Board of Selectmen and other members of the community, came back and wanted to remove a provision from the RTM section about open meetings. I think the impression was that it was a new section because it was a new section, but it wasn't a new concept. It was at the end of a paragraph, I broke it into its own section. And so their concern was that the open meeting standard would not allow them to have executive sessions under law. That was not the case. State law supersedes our charter and it's the sunshine laws, by the way, that allow for executive sessions. But I thought it was important to not have redundancy. So I've moved, you'll see in the draft that you get that I've added the RTM, all meetings of the RTM and all other elected and appointed boards and commissions shall be subject to their open meetings, public meetings. And you'll see the reference to the current section where that came from. So it's not gone, it's now in the open meeting section at the beginning of the document.
Are we deleting it at 3.4B or having it in both places?
It's going to be deleted in 3.4B. Again, wherever we can, I want to reduce redundancy.
I agree.
And that's one that got away from me, but it did come up in the recent meetings that the Corporation Council had on this issue.
John?
So that's great. The definition says each elected and appointed boards and commissions. Should we throw in their task forces too in those types of bodies?
They are.
Where are they? Did I miss that somewhere?
It's on, it's right there. It's all meetings of elected and appointed boards and commissions and all committees, task forces, or other entities shall be open to the public except for executive sessions.
That's what 1.7A says?
1.7B.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at A.
Oh, but you think, the records portion, they're not in the records portion.
Yeah. You tell me, I mean.
I'll leave it up. I mean, you work for a city.
They have to keep records, so what's the?
The record, yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Included in the records portion,
Okay. Thank you.
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent catch.
Any objection to removing the redundancy in 3.4B? John's? No. Okay, good. All right, and then I think that's it for open meetings, correct? We would move on to DEI.
Yes.
All right, so now we had language.
You're okay with the open meeting? Everybody's all right? Okay.
Yeah. Add to the records and remove the redundancy.
So we have the language that the commissioner submitted the other night, Iacono, that was presented the other night. So I don't know whether everybody's had a chance to read it.
Yep.
And I just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just had one comment that when Selectman Flynn read it, he asked if we could just add in the second sentence that starts, in furtherance of this provision, insert to the extent possible, boards and commissions should reflect the diversity.
Where is that?
Right here.
Where?
I mean,
where
you
is that?
say, so the board, it's literally the second sentence, and that first sentence is long.
All appointing authorities to the fullest extent possible take into consideration the diversity. Am I reading a wrong draft of this? Hold on.
I don't know, that's what I handed out last night. I know. Here, you want to look at this? That was his note back to me.
I've got it here.
Oh, okay.
Let me see where it is. Did you mark it in
And it
this
might
one?
be redundant, I wanted to at least highlight it.
What did he want to put in there?
Just add another to the extent possible.
This is where it is.
fullest
So the one I
extent
got
possible.
says to the fullest extent possible.
Yeah, and mine says all appointing authorities
Yeah.
should to
Oh.
the fullest.
Right.
You said that a second version.
Oh, I did? Okay, then
You said
he
that
had an old
Let me
version.
read- let me
I
read
take
you-
that back, sorry.
Let me read you what I have that I'm looking at, that I'm gonna put in here. It
No.
won't take long.
I confused the issue, I apologize.
That's okay. The active, informed, inclusive, and equitable engagement of community members, both individually and collectively, is an essential element of healthy civic life and a thriving local democracy. All appointing authorities, capital AA, should, to the fullest extent possible, take into consideration the diversity of residents and the geographic areas of town when considering the composition of boards and commissions. Boards and commissions should reflect the diversity, including race, color, ethnicity, religious creed, age, sex, national origin, ancestry, status as a veteran, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, familial and marital status, pregnancy or physical and mental disability, and cultural makeup of the town in order to achieve a representative balance of its residents.
Thank you. He had an old version.
I have some comments.
I'm not the chairman.
Sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead. This is it.
On the last sentence, I agree with what I think we're trying to say here. One, if you read it one way, it sort of locks in diversity the way it is today or the time they're thinking about it. And I think this should be sort of a forward-thinking concept that we're looking at diversity broadly, and I think somewhere it says in a geographic context, meaning more than just Fairfield. But kind of the way it says the makeup of the town sounds like we're trying to match up, go out and, not literally, but go out and see who's in the town and what's there, and match up that way. I think we should be aspirational because we're going to be growing and all that. Secondly, when we say should is pretty close to shall. And again, reading this as a lawyer, we are not going to go out and ask people these questions, to extent some of these Things may not, maybe private matters of diversity and things like that. So I don't want to give any impression that this is sort of a checklist that anybody's using and all that. So my suggestion is something along the lines of start out the sentence with diversity should be considered in its broadest sense, including, and go through the categories, and then I think then you stop at and cultural makeup. Maybe put cultural earlier in there. So does people see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So tell me.
Yeah, so I would say start the sentence with diverse, I'm sorry, the last, yes, instead, I delete boards and commissions through including the.
Okay.
Insert diversity should be considered in its broadest sense, comma, including. I would then, after ancestry, maybe putting culture there, somewhere putting culture, comma, and then end the sentence with mental disability, period.
The other thing, and what about culture? What are we doing with culture?
I think I'd insert that, I just, after ancestry, culture, status as a veteran.
Okay. So read me the opening one last time. Diversity
should be considered in its broadest sense, comma, including, I think that works.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to say including but not limited to?
I would say that.
Sure.
That's the point I was going to make, because
it's a snapshot of what
we think. The protected classes are constantly changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that point, though, is that something we shouldn't have in the charter? If something is constantly changing and we're setting something into the charter, are we thereby limiting the ability to adapt it? And would it be better, this whole topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, be better handled by an ordinance of some sort, not in the charter, not set for, a period of 2 years to 5 years to 10 years, and let the RTM take the role in it, the Board of Select Person, the Racial Equity Task Force, because even between last night and today, the thoughts and the language on this is, varied. So I just wonder if moving this all the way out into something outside the charter that's not set in stone for a period of time that might not be touchable for something that might be changing.
I think the included but not limited language addresses that issue. My recommendation, and I get shot down on this very, very often, is why name any of them? But most people want to name the groups because they think it's an important constitutional principle to name the groups. I would just rely on the definition of a protected class, but that's not as poetic as listing all the names. So,
But there's some, I would say there's some groups today that might not be defined as a protected class, but are part of the social discussion that we have that might feel excluded by the words that are on this page.
I would also add that the commission should remember that this has been a request made by Selectwoman Lefkowitz, and to my recollection, supported by the other members of the Board of Selectmen. And I thought that was the direction that they had given to this commission. And that's something for you to consider. That's why they sent things back to you.
Right, but I thought Selectwoman Lefkowitz sent an email to us today indicating that several of the attributes that we here describe on paper in words shouldn't be excluded from her perspective. So I just think we're including something that she responded between last night and today that she didn't think should be included. Maybe, please correct me if I'm misinterpreting.
Sorry,
Didn't he cut off the last part? Isn't your suggestion, or are we still?
No, I think we haven't addressed Selectwoman Lefkowitz's concern.
I think she was advocating for removal of pregnancy and veterans as part of this discussion.
And Attorney Mednick has a reason why that should not happen, and I'll let Attorney Mednick speak to that.
Okay.
These are protected classes. And if we're not going to, if we start messing with the protected classes, that's why I always have a problem with the listing of the protected classes. I like the poetry of it, but I always raise that issue. But veterans are a protected class, and pregnancy is a protected class. And so to start eliminating some of those to favor others is a difficult issue. to grapple with. It's always a very controversial provision to place in. I happen to think it's a great provision, but, you know, in different communities, you go in different directions. I had one community last year debate the issue of who wasn't in the list, which was a very touchy and interesting issue. So it's always an interesting issue, but this is the list that I think is in the current protected classes, and I think that the language, including but not limited to, gives us the ability to expand. Now, I mean, I don't know, as a rule, protected classes aren't eliminated. In theory, you think that at some point they might be, but historically they have not been. And that's the other side if one of these classes goes away, but, you know, I don't know if that's going to happen in the near future. But I think that the Corp Council's recommendation actually helps along. And a lot of this is going to have to be dealt with by ordinance, by the way.
Right.
Because we didn't consider a lot of stuff that I normally recommend. We had a lot of other things we were doing in this process that talk about selection and what the Board of Selectmen, the select person should be thinking about, and the first select person should be thinking about in the selection of people, and how you reach out and how you engage in outreach. And I think that having this will probably give the RTM and the Board of Selectmen food for thought on how we take the next steps in terms of grappling with it. It's a constitutional principle. You're going to have to deal with this through ordinance and rule.
I like it with Chris's changes, so appreciate your work on that.
And you accept the Corp Council's recommendation of including but not limited to Chris's change?
And we could hold everyone.
I just think it's limiting things, but it limits the ability to evolve this. I mean, if we had this discussion 2 years ago, 3 years ago, many of the attributes here wouldn't have existed, and I just surmise that some of that might change between now and the next 2 or 3 year cycle, but I'm just expressing an opinion.
So, I mean, I think that including the not limited to language does help to address that, and underline, I don't think it's necessary to make it explicit here, but, you know, obviously the RTM can adopt ordinances, and this is really just kind of the floor in terms of, or, you know, the guiding principle that should be included in a town charter. You know, this is aspirational, to your point, and
Yeah, and just, I appreciate what John's saying, but the other guiding principle will be, you know, what the Connecticut Supreme Court may say, or what the United States Supreme Court may say, and we're obligated to follow that anyway. So that's, and if you, with that and the included but not limited language, I think we're fine.
Okay. One other clarifying question. This just deals with diversity, doesn't deal with competence, experience, knowledge, capabilities, because, I mean, that should always be the primary consideration for membership on a board or commission, correct? I don't want to overlook the needed expertise to serve on a board and commission and overlook it in favor of other attributes of someone's personal makeup.
But I'm not sure that we have within our scope here to consider competence on, you know, we were charged with looking at the DEI.
Can I say 6.2 addresses the issue of qualifications? I did get to it. I did put that in here, both with regard to, one more second, yeah, I deal with boards and commissions. Hold on. It does, you know, it is boards and commissions. Yeah, it's authority for appointed town officers. Boards and commission members are appointed town officers. So it does allow for that, it does provide for that. And there should be, yeah, here it is.
B, yeah.
Let me take a look here.
Where is it?
It's 6.2B.
Yeah, let me just take a look at one thing here.
Point two what?
B,
Yeah, may not.
second sentence.
It may not address that.
No, that's a town.
No, these are
That's only-
employees, these are employees, not board and commission.
So a
Okay.
potential answer to this would be to insert simple wording, and I'll tell you where exactly, but something that would say, appointing authorities should consider knowledge, expertise, and experience And then, I think everything else, and should to the fullest extent possible, take into the consideration diversity of residents, et cetera. And that way we insert, because we're talking about appointment to boards and commissions, which was part of the request.
So where's the language, Commissioner?
It would go, should, right, should,
Take into account, or?
should consider knowledge, expertise, and experience. And should also, and the rest of what we had talked about, I'm okay with.
Good catch.
And to the fullest extent
Yep.
possible.
Good point. I think so. Maybe.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. We okay then with changes in C?
Yep, moving on to number 4.
Number 4, I have tried, and I'll talk to the Corp Counsel about this, because I know some people have talked about restoration of the charts. And so what I might do is pass out, does this make sense? What I've done, which I don't think is,
Well, you have two sets.
I have two
So
sets.
they can compare, they can look and choose which one they like better, kind of like color.
and maybe Mrs. Ewing should take a look at this as
Yeah.
well. Here's one group.
Oh, while we're doing that, can I ask, when this is published, is this going to be put, basically a PDF of this online, or are we going to go to that code? You know, some towns have that.
It should go in the code.
Unicode.
No, but that, is that what it's called? But-
E-code,
So
E-code,
how we
E-code.
type it and look at it gets changed a little bit to format.
That is correct.
So don't get hung up too much on, I mean, this is a different, maybe, I just want to know, is this
Yeah,
like,
no,
are we going to do all this and then it's going to be
codes-
stuck?
The codes now follow the format. In the old days, the codes used to take your format and do it alphabetically, which was absurd.
Thank you.
They tend to follow the format.
Thank you.
There are some municipalities that actually publish it the way it is published.
Like a PDF
Like a
essentially.
PDF
But this will be a searchable
Yeah.
online,
In all probability, you'd have to talk to Jim, I'm assuming that,
okay.
It's material.
here, pass this,
It goes in the
pass
section.
this down.
And you don't
And
need
many
to say
requests
the
to have it.
number.
Let's see if we have an extra one from Mrs. Ewing.
That's my,
Oh, I get it.
it's readability.
Yeah, and there's some, I'm gonna fix, I have references in the later ones, I have the actual section references.
It's gonna be like search.
Oh, there's
It's
three.
all searchable.
So this is going to be online searchable?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have extras. Would you be interested in seeing this? Weren't you the one who talked about doing the list? Yeah.
Well, I think that you have two versions, two flavors to choose
Two
from.
flavors, kind of, yeah.
There's the one that's simpler and with the
another
section
one.
numbers, and the other one that says how many members.
Yeah.
What did it?
What do you recommend?
Yeah.
I only have,
Maybe.
is this?
Whatever you guys want. This was,
What are
you
we
know,
looking at here?
if we're looking, here, what we're looking at is this.
So these seem like better.
Sorry, give me
Because
here,
they got
here,
this
please.
blue.
And I'll try to explain. What I was trying to do is,
I'm a little confused.
I had
Thought we were
in,
two.
in our versions of this, I treated everything as a legal
This is the
document.
current.
So that, for example,
So get rid of
when
that.
you got to 8.1B, A was the police commission, or I'm sorry, 1 would be the police commission, 2, I had numbers in it. Members of the public
Has
had
multiple,
requested
yeah.
that.
Can we just all focus on one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the members of
sorry.
the public had asked us to revert back to kind of a chart. And so this is an attempt to create a chart. And what I did in this version of it is I put the section reference so you can actually see where you could find out about the police commission in the introductory provision. This is style, not substance, is what we're talking about here.
Got it.
Think of me as an interior decorator. I'll wear an ascot next time. And so that's all this is. So you decide what you want to do.
Where's the old one that we're looking
Wait till the old one?
Well, the old one is the old charter.
Oh, okay.
It's these things.
This is
What
good.
section?
It's like all these things.
This one with the thing, that's how I'll flip through it.
Good, you like that?
And everyone made fun of me that I read it every night,
I think so. I don't know what other pages
this is the one.
Okay.
The section numbers next to it.
Yeah, that's the one I liked.
You have the one that has to keep reading it, so.
Yeah. Light reading, everyone said.
All right, so I'll try to fix it like the later ones, like the ones on, so I put the numbers out, people serving on, things like that. I'll fix that up for you.
Okay,
So
but,
that's, you can vote on that when you see it.
well, but I just had the side conversation with Attorney Baldwin. So would this, so what happens up front in the document? 2.3, and because I thought that was the context, maybe I missed.
It is, it is true.
Two, so,
We have it.
all right, so we're going to keep that section, it's just going to look different, fine.
We're gonna take the numbers
I
out.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
I think that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's 14.
Yeah.
And then, is there other places in the document where it talks about boards and commissions, list them,
Yep.
and it's gonna
It's these
show
numbers.
them in that simple
Like this.
format again?
Oh.
And I'm gonna take out, I'm gonna simply say Board of Selectmen, select persons, town clerk, I'm not
Want
gonna
them
have
for
the
the
numbers here.
minutes?
but I'll
I
section
have to
first.
admit, this is helpful.
Okay, well, good.
I didn't see it the first.
We are on item number
Well,
4.
don't give me credit for
It's
that.
8:01, so we're good with the new
Public
charts?
comment deserves credit for that. Let's go.
Yeah.
I know. So, did you, okay?
All right.
All right.
So the next item is separating the first select person from the board of select persons. And one of the places you will see it is in section 2.3, one, well, we're not gonna be one anymore. I had listed the first select person, then 2 additional members of the board of select persons. Now, I'm going to list them on the chart as follows, unless you say you don't want it this way. I was gonna have the Board of Select Persons, and I added, and this may be contrary to the request, and I understand that, and you shoot me down on it, including the first select person. Because my reason, and if that is contrary to everybody's understanding, you can just say the Board of Select Persons with a section reference, and I'll take us into the section. And so it's not gonna list 9 members of the Board of Finance, it's just gonna say the Board of Finance with a reference to it. But with regard to the separation of the first select person from the Board of Select Persons, we are identifying it as the Board of Select Persons. I would add including the first, but if that's contrary to what you think your understanding of discussions have been, I am your humble servant.
Pam, did you have something to say?
Or your servant.
Yes, and I admit, I'm looking at this now for the first time it's good to see the visual. I really think it needs to be separated. You need to open the book and see right there, they have a first select person. It needs to be stated because, for the obvious. I don't think you should merge it all together.
Not in that one place.
Not in that one place,
Right.
correct. Right there, in that instance, I don't do that, is my recommendation.
I agree with Pam, because I think, especially the way the voting's different for the first select person, and I think as a citizen, I think I would look, it would be confusing to me if I hear this thing, and then I look, it's, anyway, so I think it's fine.
Well, that's why I initially separated, because I didn't see
Yeah,
the
I
first
agree.
select person. I said, where's the first select person?
Right.
So you're talking about section 2.3A?
Yeah.
Yes.
This-
Yeah.
All right, so we'll keep it
Yeah, leave it be.
separate there. And now, when you go to 2.3 C1, I had separated them out, but that's the election cycle, and they're all elected together. They're all elected, I mean, there's a separate election process for the first select person, so I can go either way on it. Whatever you want me to do, I'm happy to do.
I feel the same way. You should,
Keep it
the general citizen doesn't understand the system. They should be able to open the book and understand, oh, the first select person, and then the Board of Select people.
All right, so let me see. Then, so that was 2, C2. Then the next one is in 2.3 C1. 2.3 C1. Oh, that's what I just did. That's what I just did, that one. 1A and B. Okay, that's it. We will see later on, I mean, I can take you there right now. Yeah, as we go through the document, you will see where I separated them. If, as you're reading it, you don't think it should be separated, let's resolve it on Monday. That's probably the cleanest way to do it. It's only in 2 or 3 spots, but they'll be redlined, you'll see them.
The principal thought was that where in the current charter version, they were not separated, so too they should not be separated in this new version. Basically, that's what it comes down to.
And there were really, as I went through it, only 1 or 2 places where I had.
The reverse is true, too.
Yeah.
They were separated before.
No, I don't think they necessarily were. In one iteration of the document.
I mean, like we just talked about.
They were separated when before they were not. And
Okay.
that was
That's
the
fine.
issue that has brought this to the table here for discussion, and it's very simple. It's go back to not separating them where they were not separated.
You'll see it in there, 2 of them are in 4.1. When you get to that, that's where you're gonna see it. It's not in many places,
No,
that's
it's not.
where it is. Okay. So we can move on to the next item, which is,
Is everybody, this is a big, big issue, so is everybody clear on this? The separation, there was an errata, now that was fixed, this is not giving the first select person any additional powers?
there are no power changes in this decision. I made a decision that was an editorial judgment based on my assumption that there should be, the first select person should be listed. And that was the sole rationale for
So
it.
it
There's
will
no
be
power change at all.
very clear in the document, the red line that we see and it's put online of where the first select person is separated out from the board of select person. And
And where I recommend putting them back in together. You'll see that.
Okay.
As they were.
As they were. I
As
went
they
through
were.
and did where they were connected, where they were together, I put them back together, including the 2 places you just rejected.
Well, that's sort of the reverse of all of this argument is it's a shame that that went there, but really speaking from a layman, and we've heard so much testimony that people don't know what this stuff is, they need to be open this and read it and understand it. They don't know.
Well, that's why the charts are not a silly thing. actually.
Right,
Charts
no,
are
I,
an
that,
important
that,
thing.
that's
Yeah.
really helpful,
Yeah.
so.
Good. I didn't want to, I did belabor it, but I felt that it was a point that's been made
You'll
many
see, you'll
times.
see where those are changed in the document, and we'll go from there. The next item is, do we want to move item 6 to the end of our discussion?
We did that already.
And I will defer to the Corporation Counsel on item number 7.
Also known as the town attorney. Don't forget your.
The town attorney.
You're used to your
Oh, no,
big city government.
no, the Corporation Counsel, I've been fighting with the Corporation Counsel all week. I love my town attorneys.
I think everybody has a copy. Does everyone have a copy of my latest
I
draft?
think you sent something around, it's in a pile here somewhere.
Yeah.
And since doing that, I've tweaked it in 2 other places, and I've run this by Commissioner Mottola, and I believe that he's okay with it, and of course, you can look at it some more over the weekend if you think it's necessary, but do you want me to reiterate the?
Could you just
intent?
explain it, maybe in simple terms? what this is?
I'll try, yeah. It's, the current charter and state statute both allowed for there to be, under very certain specific circumstances, for a petition and a special election for a vacancy in the office of select person, whether it's the first select person or otherwise. And that special election could take place in the middle of the summer, for example, or not during a regular municipal general election. And the sentiment by many was to get rid of that possibility. However, to allow for that vacancy to be filled at the next general municipal election. When the term for the Board of Select Persons was 2 years, that's what naturally happened, as does with other boards and commissions. There's another provision here under vacancies for elected boards and commissions where those are filled at the next general municipal election. But that was not the case for the current charter version. That provided for the possibility of someone vacating that office 1 week after they're elected, and then they're in for the next 3.9 years. And so what this does is it says that they are, that position is to be filled by election, even if they're appointed pursuant to the provisions that are set forth here, which is consistent with the current charter and some of the state statute. But they are definitely by default to be, there's to be a special election in essence, but it's to occur at the next general municipal election. Subject to the timing of that vacancy being such that it allows for nominations and primaries that's required by statute. And that language is also consistent with the vacancies in other elected town offices. The one difference is that it does not allow for the possibility of that special election being held in the middle of a year, that is, being held at any other time but a general municipal election.
By petition.
By petition, that's right. And I looked last night for guidance from anyone and those who spoke in favor of that, and that was my understanding of what was desired, and I certainly don't disagree that it's a tumultuous and perhaps unnecessary process for people to go through, and low turnout and all those reasons for pushing it to the next general municipal election.
So there won't be a special meeting?
There won't be a special election. It will, in a technical sense, it would be a special election.
Right.
But it's to be held at the next general municipal.
Got it, okay. And you just cleaned up the language so that
Yeah,
so that
if
for
you
that
want,
time when you missed that window. Okay.
I removed from the first sentence, the very last phrase, until the next general municipal election, because that's covered by the last sentence, or the second to last sentence, that says that any person appointed pursuant to this section shall serve until the next general municipal election, provided the vacancy occurs prior to the time in which nominations can be made in accordance with the general statutes.
You also, I think, Jim, the original thing you sent us said 45 days, but I think you changed that back to 30 days.
Yeah, I did. That's consistent with state statute, and it's
better.
It's better. There's no reason to prolong the situation.
30 days is pushing it, actually, we're trying to run a government.
Still says 45.
I know, but he changed it.
That's.
You'll see it in the markup I give you tomorrow.
Those are two changes that are made, but you don't have it in front of you, but those are the only changes.
Got it.
And this is an example, let me talk about the first selectman, Board of Selectmen issue, where there is separation, because there is a need to separate. So you'll see that in this section as well. Going back to that issue, I just wanted to remark.
Well, I like it. I think that we should accept it, but any thoughts?
No, I like it.
No objections on the substance of what we were discussing, but I did have a few other questions that I think I forwarded to both of you. I don't know if you had thought about it. One is, we're having the remaining select persons appoint someone. What if they don't agree, a one-to-one tie?
Then the provision here says it goes to the
There's a progression.
The elected town officers enrolled in the same political party as the first select person, I should say. Or
Town
selectman, as the case may be.
officers.
Yeah.
Elected Democrats or Republicans. They
Okay.
decide. And that's what the state statute says.
And that's what it is now. That's what it is.
Fine. Dual incapacity or dual vacancy, the designated survivor. What happens if two select people are driving in the same vehicle, unfortunately, and
And the third person selects themselves to be first selectman if they're not first selectman.
is that a conflict? I mean,
Sounds like a law school final exam question.
That's an SAT exam.
Yeah, exactly.
what happens if all three are in the same vehicle? Just to make it more challenging.
That's a FOI violation.
It would be filled by the remaining elected town officials.
There you go.
As long as there's the.
I got you.
And the three shouldn't be in the same vehicle. to
Right,
violate
Yes.
FOI.
travel like the monarchy, that's not
Yeah, it's true. They can't be in the same vehicle.
Let's put that in the charter.
They'd be violating
How shall we
FOIA.
ride in the car together?
Yeah,
At least I got some laughs out of that.
that was good. Designated survivor.
Everybody?
All right, that's
Yeah.
good.
You'll look at the language, obviously, all right. The next one should be a relatively simple one, and that is the
Parliamentarian.
parliamentarian. Oh, you're gonna see a couple spots in here, under B, where I put some language back in that I found was missing, as an errata restoration. So when you see the red line to the one that we sent in, you're gonna see in subsection 2.8B, a couple of provisions that I think, I'm gonna leave in, I think they're dealt with elsewhere, but just to resolve any issue about, their elimination, they're gonna be in the document. You'll see them, I just went by it quickly, as we were looking at this. So the next section is the parliamentarian. And I guess the question on the parliamentarian was whether they could be, what's the section on parliamentarian? A member of the body. Yeah, and I had, who may be a member of the body. They could hire somebody if they want, or use the town attorney, as a lot of communities do. But if you want to add who may be a member of the body, I think that's what they were looking for.
I thought they wanted.
Yeah, I think it
Shall be
be
a
a
member.
member of the
Okay,
body.
yes.
Okay,
That's my recollection.
Well, honestly, when I said you agreed to do this, that was my understanding of what it would be.
all right, well, it limits them, but if that's what
Yeah,
people are looking for.
My understanding, so one, the parliamentarian can't can't make the RTM do anything. The RTM decides what it wants to do. And so like in the old days when we had Eileen, the assistant town attorney there, I don't think she was technically called a parliamentarian, but essentially she was a parliamentarian. And somebody like that would be great to have there. It could be somebody who used to be on the RTM. Could be a lot of things I could see coming up that everybody'd be very happy to have, and you're restricting it to an RTM member. Why would you want to do that? Especially at the end of the day, the RTM can do it at once. It can fire the parliamentarian, it can do it.
They don't even have to appoint.
And they don't have to appoint one, we're not requiring that.
That's why I thought
All right,
may
then do it,
be,
then do it
Is that okay?
in May. Is that okay?
May
Gives them
appoint-
discretion.
Yeah.
It's no one else's discretion, but.
Even though we have to say it, actually, they don't need it in the charter to appoint a parliamentarian, so.
That's correct.
It simply says the moderator may appoint a
Some
parliamentarian.
things are aspirational, this was inspirational, that it should be done.
You're great, Jim.
I thought the RTM might be looking for.
They may appoint who may be a member of the body. So what do we do? May?
I'd leave it as is, but whatever else.
They could do this anyway, right?
Yes.
Should just take it out? And they can
I
do-
would.
If they want, take it out. Why argue over it? Any legislative body can appoint a parliamentarian.
And they could also have this among their own rules.
Yeah,
It's the
this
RTM. Why
took
should
on
we
a life
dictate
of
to the
its own.
RTM?
Just take it
Yeah.
out. It was.
So recommend deletion.
Just remove it.
Self-governing RTM.
Right.
Yeah.
Be a shorter document now.
Wait, so we're removing G altogether?
We're moving
Yeah.
G altogether.
Did you like that? You seem sad.
That's why she came tonight.
Let me point out, before we get to item number 9, remember we were talking about the notice issue later, before, in section 3.4, D and E, you will see language that permits them to establish, to have their notice standards as in the general statutes, the charter, or rules adopted hereunder if the standard is stricter, and the same thing is true under meeting notice. And I want to thank the RTM member who raised that issue. I think it was a very useful find. The next issue is a simple issue, I think. I don't think there'll be a lot of debate on item number 9. This is in subsection B, in the referendum section, 3.6B3, that we recommend that you move from the old primary hours, that was primary hours years ago, 12 to 8, to the now election hours of 6 in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, all three select persons were in agreement. I'm in agreement. Is there any objection to that? Okay, good.
Just how are we going to phrase it? Are we going to put the hours in or make reference to the statute?
Right, I was just going to ask that. Should
We
we?
can do either way. Either. if you
Does the
want.
statute ever change on that typically?
It has changed. It used to be, the primaries used to be 12 to 8.
Well, maybe we should not restrict it then to those hours. What if they decide to change? Maybe it should be statute.
Yeah, statutory reference, because.
What was, on local referenda, they defer to the town. The statute, I did look at the statute. It's your
Oh, we
call.
get to decide.
So
Okay.
Well,
that's-
those have been the hours for,
No, that's fine.
If in 10 years or 15 years when you do your next charter, the hours change, you can fix it.
Would it make sense to put words in to trying to achieve the legislative intent of it? Something like, in order to achieve maximum voter participation, and then, or it's not worth it?
It's superfluous.
Okay, dropped, pass.
I don't mean it to be, but that's,
we're on a word diet.
Delete.
from anything else in our life here?
statutory reference?
No.
No.
The statute gives
Right,
us.
okay.
Gives us-
I wanted to be sure, yeah.
Their voting hours, they've been 6 to 8 for.
All right. The next, the next change is 10. Okay, 4.2B1. 4.2B1. So in this section, this is the section where the town attorney, the distinguished town attorney, and I had a conversation with counsel for the Board of Education, and we agreed to take the reference to the Board of Education out of B1A, which is the section, it was a very narrow section that permitted the Board of Select Persons to vote to approve contracts in excess of $100,000, we'll talk about that in a moment, where they were exempted from competitive procurement and solicitation requirements
I
of the
think-
charter, and we are deleting.
Yeah, we're on 10. 10. Yeah, so the language
Oh, I'm
inconsistency.
sorry, I jumped ahead, 4.2A. So so in this case, there was a question raised by a member of the public, I believe, and by a member of the Board of Selectmen, obviously, that asked about the two different dates and wanted to see if they could be aligned. And what we determined is one of the dates is the date of the term of office, and the other date is the first meeting of the Board of Select Persons, and the week between the two made sense. So we're not recommending any change.
I did, it was pointed out to me, and I think this is correct, I think the intention was to delete the phrase after their election.
That's right.
That seemed to make
Because that's
sense.
the confusing part. And
Yes.
I thought that was early on in our discussions agreed to take it out
Because
because it causes.
you may not have a fourth Monday of November after the election.
Yeah,
Right.
It could be December by then.
Did discuss this.
So it should just be the fourth Monday of November, period.
After their
Yep,
election.
Yeah.
Which is, right.
right,
consistent,
that's
I
it.
think, with the RTM.
That's right.
We twisted ourselves in the pretzel on that one.
All right, we'll fix that. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Now.
4.2D1, we have agreed with our attorney that we would eliminate the reference to Board of Education for the approval by Board of Selectmen for competitive procurements and items that are exempt from competitive procurement and solicitation requirements. So it's a pretty simple fix in item 1. And I think that it was reiterated last night to have the reduction from 100,000 to 50,000 as the threshold for those contracts, for the remainder of the contracts that are not Board of Education, general side of this, of the budget items. So those are the two components of that request.
Don't we need to add in, accept contracts authorized to be made on behalf of the Board of Education? Because the definition of contracts includes every contract of the town, including the Board of Ed.
No, we got rid of that.
We deleted that language.
Well, a contract is a contract of the town, so we said nothing, going back to the definition, right? Now, it didn't say anything about the Board of Ed in definition, correct?
Right.
So that means Board of Ed contracts are in the definition of contract, as is every other board.
No, I don't read it that way.
Well, if you don't, okay. Then this is what it was. I went back to what was in the current charter, and that's how it was set up, if I read it right. Contracts means all contractual relations of the town. Isn't the Board of Ed part of the town?
No, they're a separate legal entity. They're a subdivision of the state. They're a department, but
But for definitions here, elsewhere, we don't divide up the town and the Board of Ed.
so what do you want to propose?
I want to put in the language that's in there now that's working.
What language?
It says, in the contracts, you need to put in there, go back to the,
Even in this section.
in
The original definition.
You don't want to exclude
4.2B1. No, definitions, keep the way we changed it.
Okay.
In 4.2B1, you have to add
Excluding.
except contracts authorized to be made by or on behalf of the Board of Ed. It's now in 6.1C1. So all I did was go back to where it is today, which I thought was basically the request.
I have that in the side of the page, by the way. If you take a look.
Where are you? What's that?
If you look at the side of the section in note.
1C1.
That's in the current chart.
In the current,
Yeah, okay.
Can you read what it says now, since?
okay, now it says, all contracts to which the town shall be a party shall be subject to approval of the Board of Selectmen, except contracts authorized to be made by or on behalf of the Board of Education.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was red, yeah, just, it's red line, so just put it back in there.
I'll put it in. I have it in the side, in the comment box, I have that language. So we can put that language in.
And just for everyone.
Should we say authorized by state law? By general statutes? Because that's the sole source of their authority would be the general statutes. They have no independent.
Sorry, instead of what? Instead of this language?
No. Subject to approval, except contracts authorized by the general statutes, by or on behalf of the Board of Education.
Isn't that implied? And they can't.
Yeah, it's statutory.
Yeah.
By law.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're not saying
that's
that
good.
everywhere, everything in here
Yeah.
is, sort of, you could stick that.
I
I think that might.
I want to make sure you're not creating a special right. Boards of Ed, as a
I don't think
rule-
we are, and also we have a practice, I think, in
All right,
town.
then
I
leave
think
the
we're
language
trying
as
to-
it is.
Unless I defer to town attorney.
No, I'm fine with that.
So we're going to keep the language that Chris just read and
We'll
include
have
it
the
in
language
here.
that's in the current,
That current
that
chart.
Chris
Yep,
just read.
thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, everybody okay with those?
Did we talk about the 50,000?
I raised it, I don't know if you.
I don't
talked
think we
about it.
discussed it.
Maybe we didn't discuss it.
Was that like something just unanimous that the Board of Selectmen wanted to reduce it, or did they?
What, the 100 to 50?
Yeah.
That was data-driven?
That was Tom Flynn driven.
That was,
He did say that, yeah.
yeah, I don't think there was.
Nobody.
There was no real,
He admitted there was no data behind it.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, it was 10,000.
50,000.
No,
No, it was.
the current charter, it's 10.
Current's 10, I don't, if they want 50, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother.
Just to be clear, this is not mirror that section of the charter that Commissioner Brogan is referring to exactly, because that referred to the Board of Selectmen reviewing all contracts of the town. And that is not what this speaks to. This is speaking to those contracts of the town which do not follow the regular procurement policies of an RFP, if you will.
Right.
So, okay, I'm just to be clear and on the record with that. So,
And it doesn't include Board of Ed contracts.
and it does not include
Right.
Board of Ed.
So we have a purchasing policy in place and blah, 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 and for some reason, there's a contract that doesn't come under that, this is where this kicks in. And the limit's gonna be, we're gonna, 50, right? Well, I don't care, whatever you guys wanna do, I really don't care, 100 or 50.
I'll give you an example, and that's an emergency procurement.
Right.
And that's probably the most likely scenario.
Yep.
And they're just saying that you can't, if it's a $95,000 emergency procurement, it needs to be vetted by the Board of Select Persons. And Selectman Flynn and the board wanted that number to be lower.
In the interest of tighter controls and better fiscal stewardship, and it makes perfect common sense, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So, next item is on the next page. It's a minor change, section 4.2B4C. This is advisory committees, task forces, or other similar entities. At the end of that sentence, it basically reads, such advisory committees, task forces, or other similar entities as they deem necessary, they should create them, or useful from time to time to study and advise on any town matters which are of concern of the board, and Commissioner Lefkowitz wanted to add, or the town. The language of the town is in, or the town is in the charter now. I think I thought that I eliminated it because I thought when you say town matters, it was of the town. But it doesn't bother me to add the phrase that's in the current charter.
Yeah, I'm happy to honor that request.
Not to be.
Oh.
If you say board or the town, does the board have a different consideration than the town?
Well, you can take board out. I mean.
I would leave board out and put back
Yeah.
of the town, hopefully.
Gotcha. Are we okay with that?
What section is it, sorry?
This is section
4.2B.
4.2B4C. 4C. It's advisory committees, task forces, or other.
Other similar entities.
Okay, got it?
This is where we get into
Instead of the board, of the town.
We're going to take.
That's all.
Take out
That's all.
of the board
Yeah,
and just do
I
of the
thought,
town.
I eliminated of the town in my draft because it said town matters. And that's why I said concern of the board, but if you want to flip it back, it's,
You're reverting back to the original.
kind of, yeah, close to it, yes, yeah. All right, everybody all right with that one? Yep. Okay, the next issue is a significant change, and this is in 4.3B4 and 5. 6 and 8 deal with other issues. The finance director actually came to us just before this went to the Board of Select Persons and asked to make sure that the annual submission to the Board of Finance was, of the capital budget, would be the capital budget for the next fiscal year, not the updated 5-year plan. And so that we had a parenthetical that the 5-year plan would be going to the Board of Finance. Then, in that sentence, but in the next sentence, she's responsible for preparing and maintaining the long-term financial and capital plan that takes into account the next 5 years. The annual plan shall be submitted to the Board of Finance. That's redundant. That can go away. Take a look at that, Jim. I think that's redundant, to submitting And the RTM should probably be added in there because the plan, or they're now talking about not putting the plan into the budget? Is that what I'm understanding? Is that what the discussion was last night? We need to get clarity on this.
They wanted, my understanding was they wanted flexibility when to present the capital plan.
So
And not-
sometime
and not-
annually, they would submit it, but it won't be necessarily coinciding with the general fund budget.
So,
But then you, go ahead, Jim, I'm sorry.
sorry, so I think the idea is to delete during the budget deliberations that's set forth in Article 9 of this charter.
Correct.
Isn't that the fix?
That's the fix.
That's what the request was.
All right, good.
So that gives you the flexibility and to continue the current practice, more or less.
I mean, the current practice is to have our waterfall meeting, if or whatever you want to call it, in September. And that looks at our plan moving forward for 5 years. And then hopefully be able, when the budget comes around, to know what capital items we're going to be approving and possibly voting on, just from a planning standpoint. So I understand what Mr. Flynn was saying last night. I think he just, and I don't know how you put this in the charter, he just wants some flex, and I think the first select person too, wants flexibility with respect to when. But I don't know how you have that in the charter. There's nothing in the charter that says they have to submit this capital plan by X date.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
We merged the
What-
process.
With the budget
In the
thing.
budget.
Right.
And it's only for the 1 year budget, but they want that out now as well, is my understanding.
To maintain the flexibility, otherwise you're locked into the period of time. And it's flexibility not only for the current first select person, but for anyone else who comes along. They may not want to do it in September. They may want to do it during the budget process, and that would allow them to do it. I mean,
Section 4 should simply read that, and frankly, we could take it out because it's dealt with in Title 9, Article 9 anyhow. I just listed it here so somebody could see what the general responsibilities of the first select person is. 4 is really just the submission of the operating budget. We strip it down, that's what it is. And that is in compliance with Article 9. 5 is dealing with the long-term plan and the annual plan, and that does not go into Article 9. And so she has those functions. 5 is less defined, 4 goes into Article 9.
okay, I'm confused. So
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Could this be an item that
Yes.
you all flesh out and then come back? Because
It's a little
we used to,
confusing.
We'll fix it.
you know,
Including the update of the 5-year capital plan is problematic. Yes, we'll do that.
it's akin to writing policy at the table and then you don't know
Well,
what
I
you're
think
doing.
we all agree with the idea of the
Yeah, and the
flexibility.
concept, yeah, definitely, but figure out what the words should be.
Because I wasn't clear from listening from Hamden last night what was going on here, so we'll fix this.
I thought I thought for number 5 there, I thought Selectman Flynn said, where it says prepare and maintain a long-term financial, I thought he said the financial should
wanted
be
financial
out.
That's right.
That's why I think you guys should
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think the consensus is to clean this up and then tell us
You'll see it.
what the right words are.
It'll be clean.
I agree with that.
What about these other issues on,
Just one other point, the capital plan is a planning document. It's not subject to approval by any boards and commissions, as I understand it.
You're right, the approval comes when we actually vote on a capital item.
On individual items, as they come through the
That's
waterfall.
right, because things can change, right.
so the conception then is not for an annual plan. It would be as the waterfall falls and something falls out of there, you bring it for approvals to the
No,
appropriate bodies.
no, there should be an annual plan that's presented.
But you
that's-
don't have a date for that presentation, whenever.
Don't have
you
it,
go around.
right, there should be an annual plan that's presented, but what John Wynn's saying, and he's right about this, that doesn't mean that every item on that annual capital plan is gonna be approved. That it's a working document that gives us an idea where we're going. And then obviously, from that document, we have to specifically vote on each item, that's all.
Very good. Okay. All right, we'll work on that. We'll fix that. The next one is, I thought it was rejected last night, but I could be wrecked because I have a bunch of deletion remarks in it. This is the issue about the word willing or similar qualifier to deal with assignments. So, was there a general consensus around the table that would not go forward? Okay. All right. Now, the next item is the mediation and resolution clause. I won't say a thing.
Just take it out.
Take out the word resolution.
I think I would agree with Pam that we should take the whole thing out. But
Fine with that. I mean,
Listen, it was well-intentioned, and again, it just flew off the rails in such a direction that, it's not worth keeping in at this point, in my opinion.
I have to say, it's the most misunderstood group of words that I have ever read in my entire life.
I couldn't agree with you more. It was.
we'll frame them for you.
Please. We will use them in another town. This was actually recommended by a first selectman in a small town. But whatever.
All right, Steve.
There was a good.
You're good.
Guys. All right.
But they're gone.
All right. Town administrator, folks, something real. So what do you want me to do here?
And I just, so I think one of the recommendations on this was delineation of duties. At least Mr. Flynn seemed to say there should be something there. I kind of looked, we got an email today from, I forget who sent it, someone, Kathleen Griffin. Look at everyone, look at the Weston delineation of duties. It's kind of general. And it has language in there, if I recall, that says, including anything that the first select person wants to assign to this person, so it doesn't limit the first select person. I think that might be something that is worthwhile taking a look at.
So I had crafted some words that I sent to
Okay.
the two attorneys. Let me just read them now. A reaction by looking around the table. I can't see what you're reading. So town administrator duties. Trying to follow what you're describing, as a lead, but I have it maybe a tiny bit shorter, but I think it covers all the points. Town administrative duties to include planning, oversight, management related to town departments, town operations, and assistance in interacting with town boards and bodies. Periodic updates on town matters should be provided to the first select person and board of select persons as requested and needed, and as requested by the first select person.
I like that language. I would say that whoever this town administrator person is needs to, and we can debate how many times, but needs to report to the Board of Selectmen once a month or something on what's going on in the town. They have 2 meetings a month, Jim?
2 meetings a month, but I think the language that John proposed speaks to that.
I think it says upon request.
John, can you?
Yeah,
can you read it
and
again?
I'm not sure that you need the town administrator to come because he or she serves the administration and the chief executive being the first select person anyway, who is always at every board meeting. I think it might be a bit onerous to make that a requirement.
John, do you have language that says upon the request of a selectman?
I do.
I would prefer that there's something in the charter.
Not select person, first select person.
Select person.
Who's the chief executive, yeah.
So if a select person says, I want the town administrator at the next meeting because I want an update, that doesn't.
I didn't specifically articulate that.
Well, I think you need at least that.
But is that already in the charter? Isn't there a provision that they can, any select person can?
Board is select person.
It has to be a board.
I just think, hey, listen, this is a great idea, and this town administrator, whatever you want to call it, I just think it's important that this person just on a regular basis, and maybe it's once every couple of months, just gives a report to the Board of Selectmen as to what's going on. And I know the first select person can do that too, but just, I think it's important for the town that we have some type of a reporting requirement. That's all.
Is that in the Weston version?
Might be, I don't remember. I think it's in some of the ones I was reading.
John, do you have a paper version of your document, or are you just the one?
Yeah, I've got that.
All right.
I've got it.
Then I've got it. You sent it to me.
So I've got one from Wilton here that, have you seen a Wilton one, Steve? It says, the town administrator appointments and duties, the first select person shall appoint a town administrator who shall be advisor to the first select person. Under the supervision of the first select person, the town administrator shall be responsible for administrative functions relatively to the daily operations of departments. At the direction of the first select person, the town administrator may serve as the liaison between the first select person and other town bodies and be tasked with specific projects. From time to time or upon request from the Board of Select Persons, the town administrator shall provide updates on town matters or special projects as assigned by the first select person to the Board of Select Persons.
That's okay. That's better.
Dictate the frequency is where it just.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. I just,
Do we have, is that, or you're?
that's Weston, right? Or Wilton, you were reading Wilton.
I see. Thank you, I do have it.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's double check it. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it?
Yep.
That's the whole thing?
Yep.
Everybody's
Yeah. That's it.
Why don't I include that language in my draft, and you'll look at it, and we'll figure it out on Monday.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
Didn't have to be a, so. I don't know if you need a generic, the general and other duties assigned by, I'm not sure that, I just read it quickly.
I'm good with that.
I'll lose it. I want to put this in here so I don't lose this.
I like number 17.
We didn't finalize the title?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, what do you want to do about the title?
Okay.
Well, I think Selectman Flynn wanted us to revert what we have to what we have.
Which was,
Chief Administrative Officer.
what do you guys want to do?
I think we debated that extensively. I think we landed on town administrator for a variety of factors, and that's consistent with what we've seen in some of the recently provided descriptions of the position. It also eliminates potential for confusion with current positions in town management. So.
And I agree with John Wynn on that.
I think it was the consensus of the, two of the members of the Board of Select Persons that they wanted to have CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer. That was their request.
CAO. They very clearly wanted to revert back to and use the title that they're using now. They did an extensive amount of research on it when they opened up the position, and I have to be honest, I didn't really know here nor there from any of it outside of what we were all talking about, but then when I went in to go do a whole bunch of homework on stuff, everything that I was pulling up said Chief Administrative Officer. Like the National Civic League uses Chief Administrative Officer. Even if you go into some of the state statutes, it says Chief Administrative Officer. Like repeatedly, I kept seeing Chief Administrative Officer.
That is the common.
I didn't say anything in any of the original conversation because I totally agreed with everything everybody was saying. But I will tell you, when I went and looked up all this stuff, it all said Chief Administrative Officer.
It's everybody's pleasure.
And we had two select people ask us to change it back to what it is currently.
What if we kept it the way it is and they reject the title change? Does the whole thing go away?
There is no position. There's nothing to revert to on the title. It's an interesting question because.
Untitled.
What's that?
It's an untitled position.
Untitled position.
We'll call it Hey You
Yeah.
position, something like that. I mean,
Position, but the, but I, yeah, you can decide, I mean, I think you have to if you want to keep CAO, or if you want to keep.
I'm willing to relent in the interest of the people that are going to be involved in the management of this individual and respect their interest and decision on it. And maybe they're going to wind up with a unanimous decision in naming the position rather than just what we have now is 2 out of the 3, so.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying
Revert CAO.
go back to CAO.
It's a form over substance argument, by the way.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
That's fine.
And fine.
Not to. get
So
into
it's
the
CAO.
Yeah.
Not me. Oh, in 4.5, I just want to point out, you'll see this, I was reading this was interesting. I was reading the definition of regulations, and I was reading the sentence, it wasn't a sentence, and I went back to the old charter and realized that I dropped the first 7 words of the sentence, or they fell out at some point. You'll see them back in here. That was an errata, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. The next one is 5.7B, and this is planning and zoning. And I think that everybody understood last night that POCD is the term of art that's used now. And if everybody's okay with that, we'll just move to the next.
And then we were going to delete or amend.
We're going to delete the last clause.
And
or
master
amend
plan.
Any master plan
Yep.
previously adopted. The item 18 is to, whether the electoral requirement should be attached to the position of town attorney. I think the recommendation is to, I don't know what the recommendation was, is to,
I think the consensus was to make that change.
make the change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we were all in agreement with
Yeah.
that.
All right, so the town attorney would have to come out of section 6.1.
And the library.
1 second before we get to the library. This is another section, I want to just point out that 6.1C is where we add committees, task forces, or other like entities to being excluded from the single office requirement for appointed office. They're excluded from that requirement. And there's some errata in 6.4 that you'll see.
I'm sorry, what were, you're adding something to
1C. We're adding committees, task forces, or other like entities created pursuant to section 4.2 of the charter, that if you serve on a task force, you're not covered by the single office requirement for appointed office. That doesn't count against you if you're appointed.
I mean, by definition, they're not town officers, right? I mean, it's not a town office.
Yeah, I think definitionally,
They're excluded.
They're excluded, but
maybe.
For clarity's sake?
for clarity's sake, this is a belt and suspenders, clip-on suspenders. It's not that elegant, it's just clip-on. All right, the next issue, the library trustee. So it's, we're jumping to 8, what's that, 8.16?
I don't think there was any
nothing radical in here, but.
any controversy or much discussion over this, other than the knowledge that it was vetted by the CFO in concert with myself and the members of the Library Board of Trustees.
Two minor points on it. It says Board of Selectmen rather than Board of Select Persons.
Yeah, that's.
No, you're okay, got it.
Errata. And then the sequence of here, the Board of Library Trustees, Board of Selectmen, and by the Board of Finance, who leads, who follows as far as the voting regimen, this is different than what we have for our annual budget appropriations sequence. Not a big point, I just read it and didn't know if they should be. And maybe the Board of Finance is last because they're acting as fiduciary on this. I'm just not sure, but
The fiduciaries, the library trustees are fiduciaries, aren't they?
You have to tell me what we're.
I'm sorry, it's in paragraph 2 of,
8.18,
it was revised language that was provided by the Board of Library Trustees.
Yeah, the D2.
Oh, is that the one that you sent?
Yeah.
So you're asking why the RTM's left off? Is that the question?
No, actually, that's a good catch. I was not asking that. I was asking about the sequence of library trustees, board of selectmen, and then the board of finance, and is that the sequence of who's voting on whatever this might be?
Usually, when we vote on things, John, like, that's kind of the sequence.
Yeah, that's the
It usually goes to
sequence.
like, to the board of selectmen first on an item,
Okay.
and then it goes to the board
Yeah,
of finance.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct. Good question.
And it doesn't have to go to the RTM, that particular thing?
Correct.
Got it.
And as a drafting thing, I would include, for purposes of this provision, the following definitions shall apply before the two definitions. It just,
I have defined terms applicable to this provision.
okay.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Everybody's okay with that? Let me tell you another thing that I did. It's more of a Scrivener's decision. Not a Scrivener's decision, there's a mistake. The Historic District Commission was not placed in the right section, so I've now moved it into the right section, where it is a body that is appointed by the Board of
The RTM.
Well, it's approved by.
Confirmed
sorry,
by, yeah.
Yeah, it's approved by the RTM.
What is it?
It's appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
In the
select
charts
persons
where we
approved by
have
the RTM.
bodies approved, the two bodies that are approved by the RTM, or concurred by the RTM, were the ethics and historic.
Yeah, and
Historic
this was under
left-
the other
left
section,
out
so we
there.
moved it to the right section. So it's not it was a Scrivener's.
Oh, okay, it
correction.
was in the wrong title
Yeah.
section.
Errata, we'll call them, a number of words, errata. Next, this was the issue of moving the budget cooperation provision. I think you made a decision on this last night, if I'm not mistaken, to leave it where it is the cooperation section in the budget.
Yeah, that's what I would vote for.
Yep.
Okay. Quinn, you good with that?
Then there was the issue of, 21 is something that will be included in our fix on the budget stuff. We need to figure out what we need to do in the section on the budget as well.
So,
Is that okay?
yeah, but just a couple of things on that. I thought
The other date agreed to,
the first week in March.
not that,
And then the other issue,
was the presiding officer issue.
yeah, and then, can I ask one question on the 9.3? I think it's part of this. 9.3A2. Do we need that language? Is it necessary?
What's the problem with it?
I'm just asking, do we need that language, and is it
Somebody
necessary?
it's an interesting issue. Somebody looked at the work we did and found that a lot of this language, which is definitional, came from an investigative function of a legislative body, I believe, in Stratford.
Yeah.
As I go through these documents, I'm always looking for ways to define terms. All this does, this is not about an investigation, has nothing to do with an investigation. It's actually ludicrous that read would come into it, although I recognize where it came from. All it does is define what information is, that we should be able to look at books and records and contracts and reports and other papers Those are the kind of things that, when you're putting a budget together, that the executive should have access to, and frankly, has access to by subpoena, if they want it in the other section. So I didn't think, I think it's a relatively harmless definition that is taken totally out of context by virtue of where the language came from. It was a very deft catch that somebody actually, I'm grateful that somebody actually went through the work we've done, but it came from Legislative Investigation Authority. This is not an investigation.
I appreciate that, and I think a first select person would have authority as for that information.
And this just makes it a charter requirement, so the people, it's like the cooperation clauses and things like that. This simply says, guys, make sure you have your facts together.
My only point is I don't think it's necessary because we do these things anyway, and it just adds further language to the document. That's all. So I'm.
It's your call.
What, you're talking about
9.3A2. 9.3A1 kind of says, you know, you have to provide any items and details, et cetera, for the first select person to formulate the budget. I don't think we need two. That's all I'm saying. And plus, we have a cooperation clause at the beginning of this. We're all supposed to cooperate together. That's all I'm saying.
This is not dissimilar to a lot of language, the charter
No.
throughout the state. So that it just makes it clear. I'm telling you, I just went through this in another municipality with the Board of Education, where they don't want to provide a contract, and they want us to give them money.
We don't do that here, though, Steve. Really, that's never, and on the Board of Finance, when we ask the Board of Education for something, they go head over heels and give us the information. And if the first Board of Selectmen asks the Board of Ed to provide information, or any department, they provide it. I just think it's, all I'm saying is I think it's unnecessary. That's it. So it's up to you guys. Go either way on it.
I like that it's in here. I like spelling stuff out for people to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not having the history, and I agree, haven't heard of a
I
problem.
mean, you're right,
It can't
they've
hurt to
always
have
been
it.
cooperative. It's not saying they're not cooperative. I mean, you and I were both on that board, but I mean, we're not always all gonna be here, so I just like, I like that it's spelled out.
I think you and I will be here for a long time.
Both sentenced to life.
Counting down the days.
No. Whatever you guys want to do. I just wanted to point that out. That's all. Totally up to you.
So Jim and I will fix the budget stuff and come back to you on
I would keep it too.
I would keep it. I would keep it.
Keep it.
All right.
Keep it. It's written, it's clear.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing is the facilitator, moving facilitator to presiding officer. So that we can deal with. That's 22.
Yeah.
If everybody's okay with that.
Does that solve everybody's concern? I think so.
That's-
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I think that does.
Okay.
Machine last
Good.
night, I think everybody was happy with that. And I have the dates in here, Commissioner Mottola. I have the date from the 2nd to the 1st.
Yep.
So that's fixed. We'll just look at the capital budget stuff and make sure everything is fixed. That's it.
It's not it.
We have to do that again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we have to go back.
We saved the best for last.
Oh, yeah, sure. We're gonna take a 2-minute comfort break and then come right back and do the item number 6. Which is probably 5 minutes.
Almost there.
You're gonna.
We do have one one other item that we had tabled for the end of the meeting, which is number 6 on the resolution. And that, it says Article 2.3B and C, point 1C, 3.2A1C. Please review the issue pertaining to the number of RTM members. There has been obviously a lot of robust discussion on this throughout the last, the course of this commission. So a lot's been said. I think there is some more that has come up specifically by request from some of the select persons as they deliberated. And we've had some members, diligently work to put some information together that I think they want to present. And anything else that we want to discuss among the body. But I would defer to anyone who would like to speak on this matter. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Wynn and I are going to kind of piggyback off one another, if that's okay, at everybody's indulgence. So John might chime in here when I'm going, but specific to Selectman Flynn's request, who said to us at the Board of Selectmen meeting, he was looking for the pros and cons of moving to a smaller legislative body. And then he also said he wanted some data around that. And I called him to ask him what that meant, what specifically was he looking for. And he was kind enough to run down things that he was looking, specific numbers that he was looking for in answering that, around attendance and resignation and how much work got done in terms of legislation and voting stats and what we look like compared to other towns with RTMs, other municipalities. So Commissioner Wynn and I spent a lot of time trying to pull that information together to see if we could address at least his points. We thought it was important to answer the question. And, as Chairman Caffarelli said, certainly everybody else should chime in as well. But this was information that we came back with. So the first portion are the pros and the cons that he asked us to put together. So that's a little bit verbose, so, bear with us. And then the data part, we can fill in as we go along. And then I have charts and data that he asked for specifically about municipalities. So I wanted to be able to provide that as well. In terms of the pros of it, improved accountability. There seems to be no question that less RTM members will result in a more focus on individual views and individual votes, which will lead to more ownership and accountability, therefore better outcomes for the town of Fairfield. In fact, an evaluation of the RTM attendance from 2010 to 2015, when the RTM body was 50, compared to 2016 to 2022, when the RTM was a body of 40, indicates a decrease in average absenteeism from 14.5% to 10.6% overall, which is a significant decrease of 27%. So one might conclude that a smaller body might actually result in a more robust involvement.
So as Pam mentioned, accountability in every source that we looked at, that we could find from the Model City Charter, other studies, accountability is like the single most preeminent condition that you seek to achieve as far as improving accountability. In the material that you have, if you look at page 4, Pam mentioned the first item there, which is the absentee rate changing and a significant reduction of absenteeism to 27%. And we looked at the data a little bit more granularly as well. And if you eliminate the highs and lows, i.e. the outliers, if you eliminate those from the analysis, the absenteeism rate goes from 14.5% to 10.5%, which is also a very significant 28% reduction in absenteeism. If the 2022 year is not included, since we're only partially through the year, the rates are 14.5% to 10.8%, which is still a 25% reduction. The absentee rate, excluding the pandemic years, which we recognize are a very unusual set of facts to deal with, the rate went from 14.5% to 13.6%, a 7% reduction, and that's still a material change in the absenteeism. We also looked at vacancies to try and ascertain if there was any meaningful pattern that could be drawn, and the majority of the resignations seemed to be the result of moves away from Fairfield or other life's events that the analysis did not provide any meaningful conclusions. But the conclusion overall is that a move to a smaller RTM in 2016 resulted in lower absenteeism, thereby enhancing the level of RTM participation in the legislative work of the town.
We also feel that another pro is improved relationships and better outcomes. A smaller group will enhance the ability of the RTM to develop better, more collaborative relationships amongst the members, which will hopefully result in members crossing party lines and working together. It seems obvious to state the obvious. We seem to have a true partisan problem in Fairfield. We also feel that this will improve the quality of members. Some have said it is important for voters to know their reps. By definition, 30 is less than 40. However, there has been difficulty in getting people to run, resulting in less involved, less committed people. A smaller RTM would result in the cream of the crop rising to the top, with increased knowledge by each member of the town government and personnel. It may also increase competition for RTM seats.
And during the strategic planning process, we significantly heard, I know people will dispute that, but it came up in every phase of the work that we did. People don't really understand the RTM. The RTM was less involved and less engaged, even though their participation and leadership during that process was extensively sought. So it's just, uninvolved members tend to degrade the capability of the organization to perform.
This can also be a stepping stone to a more effective government model. It was evident that the CRC cannot convince the town of Fairfield that a more effective government model should be considered, even though many members supported this. So to move in this direction will help future commissions see the benefits of smaller legislative bodies. Big change is not readily accepted. Incremental change with resulting incremental benefits can be accepted, as we have accepted the positive move from 50 to 40. Recognized research studies conclude that smaller bodies have been proven to be more effective than larger ones. Smaller legislative bodies are more effective instruments for the development of programs and the conduct of municipal business than large local legislative bodies. In the United States, large municipal legislative bodies only in exceptional situations can discharge their responsibilities promptly and effectively. Large legislative bodies whose members represent relatively small districts frequently result in narrow views, which distracts attention from the problems of the whole municipality. That's not my opinion. That's all stated very clearly by the National Civic League.
And looking closer at just our town, we recognize there are many variables in that we consider in construct of the governance, the number of districts, minority party representation at large districts, but we recognize changing too many of those things would be too much of a challenge to try and do them all at once. So we focused on keeping some things static, like the district model, and we had to evaluate what options that would present in RTM size, whether it remain at 40, go to 30, go to 20, go to 10. Going to 10 was far too much of a distance to travel. We just didn't think that the town was ready for that. Some wanted 20 as part of this commission. We had lively and active discussion on that. We decided to compromise at 30 because we thought that was a step in the right direction for all the reasons that we've previously described regarding accountability. Yet it's one that wouldn't be too dramatic of a change and would allow us to keep a number of the variables that are presently here in town static and stable.
Additionally, there's been no diminution of legislative results. So there's been no less legislative work being done by the body with 40 versus 30 currently. And we don't think that there'll be any less legislative work being done if we move from 40 to 30. When the RTM moved from 50 to 40 without any public complaint or shortened agendas or less accomplishment of legislative work. In fact, a review of ordinances enacted for each year shows a normal level of ordinances crafted, and there does not seem to be any cessation of ordinance enacted after the movement of the RTM from 50 to 40 members, by 2016. In fact, if you pull up all the ordinance work that was done, it's exactly the same. If you look at the 2010 to 2015, we enacted 14 ordinances, or amended them or made changes to them. And in between 2016 and the present, we've actually done 14 so far. And there's actually 2 sitting on an agenda actively being heard, and I anticipate that those will pass as well. So there's an argument to be made at 40, we're doing more legislative ordinance work as a smaller body. In today's world, we don't need 40 members to address individual constituent needs. With the advent of technology, email, social media platforms, electronic citizen request forms, residents have direct access to department heads and town administration. Each state representative has 1 representative, U.S. Congressional District has 1 representative, and the RTM will have 3 representatives per district to handle constituent issues without any added burden for the representative or constituent. This increases visibility and accountability for those 3 reps.
And even at 30, we have more reps per person than many of the other significant boards and commissions in town, like the Board of Ed, in relation to the number of students that they're providing for, or families, the Board of Finance in managing the things that they do regarding the budget. So even at 30, it's not that dramatic of a change.
You have an increase of availability of civic-minded individuals to serve on other boards. The current 10 members who would not become future candidates might be willing to serve on other boards and commissions, which might benefit from their specific knowledge or expertise. These more narrowly focused boards could be of more interest to such individuals. Following leading practices, the majority of towns in Connecticut have moved from larger legislative bodies to smaller ones. No town has moved in the opposite direction. While staying at 40 members is not moving to a larger body, this fact highlights a trend in, indeed, what is now the norm in the U.S. of smaller, more effective legislative bodies, but still messy.
And we're still not trying to eliminate the democratic debate process. We really just want to improve it. It's part of our fabric, and that certainly is going to stay.
Now, the cons. It's potentially difficult in communicating the benefits, as we're sitting here right now debating all of this. There's been a large contingent of mostly current RTM members who, up until now, have been the most vocal in their fear that this change will result in less representation. If this item were to be sent to the voters, it would be incumbent on the Board of Selectmen to provide significant, effective education and explanation of this improvement to alleviate concerns. Change is difficult. Any sort of change requires understanding and steps to remove fear and miscommunication, particularly when it involves matters of voting and representation. However, change also presents great opportunities in growth and learning. Change is a process. All change comes with uncertainty and adjustment to new conditions. If present, this should be a temporary discomfort. The perception that more is better. Information is good. When looking for good ideas, more people contribute and may lead to more options. In our current RTM, we frequently find many folks do not contribute. So despite the fact that we have more, we don't necessarily benefit from it. In addition, contribution from the public is always welcome, so good ideas are not restricted to coming from the body. It's a change from history. We've always done it this way. Well, not exactly true. We used to have more RTM members, and until 1947, we didn't even have an RTM. Is it in our best interest to stay forever? Stay the same forever. Looked at it another way, history has given us the perspective to evaluate best practices and make positive changes. We are not the same town we were in the 1800s, and maybe it's time to govern more effectively. No analysis. Some of those who oppose this idea state that there was a lack of analysis for this recommendation. Analysis is defined as detailed examination of the elements or the structure of something. A conclusion on RTM sizing is not empirical science. One must rely on research, analysis, and insights of academic and municipal research, which provide indicators with which to make decisions. The existing research and information, as well as the input of outside expertise, was gathered, evaluated, and used as part of the CRC discussions. We believe we met that standard. If you look at some of the charts that are on the back of this document that we provided, the first one is the 21 most populous towns or municipalities in Connecticut. And you can see, looking at this chart, that the only municipality that is ahead of us in representation is Greenwich. And I want to talk a little bit just about RTMs in general from other towns, which are, that data is provided on the next page. And I'm just going to read off a bunch of statistics, and you can kind of flip between the two charts to see and have them as a reference to what I'm speaking about. But what I'm about to read is all found in the two charts that are attached. In comparison to municipalities with RTMs, there are 6 in the state of Connecticut: Darien, Greenwich, Westport, Waterford, Brantford, and Fairfield. There is only one other municipality of our size with an RTM, and that's Greenwich. Greenwich has 63,500 residents. Fairfield has 62,000. The other municipalities average 24,000 residents. Greenwich is an outlier with a 230-member RTM. It is important to note that Greenwich has a nonpartisan RTM. Citizens petition onto the ballot. They do not use a party caucus system, and their proportional representation is determined by formula, not an equal number of representatives per district like Fairfield. Darien and Westport also have a nonpartisan RTM. They do not use a party caucus system. Citizens petition onto the ballot. Waterford and Brantford have partisan RTMs, but their proportional representation is determined by formula, not an equal number of representatives per district like Fairfield. Additionally, Waterford representation changes at each municipal election based on district population calculations. So if you look at all of these charts, moving from 40 to 30 in comparison to other municipalities, Fairfield remains in the same place in the rankings. Using this data, it is difficult to draw governance comparison conclusions between towns due to the significant differences in structure, partisan versus nonpartisan as one example. In comparison to the top 21 most populous municipalities, looking at 40 versus 30 members, Fairfield remains the same in the rankings, number 2 behind Greenwich. Again, Greenwich has a nonpartisan representative government. Fairfield does not. And Greenwich is an outlier, again, with the 230 members serving on the RTM. Behind Greenwich and then Fairfield are all the other top populated municipalities in ranking. Fairfield, 3,408 people per rep compared to Fairfield's 2,055. Milford, 3,063. Middletown, 3,867. Danbury, 4,030. New Haven, 4,346. Stratford, 5,212, and so on and so forth. Is governance better? It's arguable, as the systems aren't apples to apples. However, we aren't out of the realm of the average for like-sized communities. In fact, we are top in ranking of a partisan RTM, whether at 40 or 30. It doesn't significantly diminish representation in comparison to our population peers. So this was some of the data that Selectman Flynn had asked us to put together. We did our best to go back and research each item that he gave me as a bullet point to discuss. He did ask us to research votes. I will tell you it's incredibly difficult to go in and do that, the way that our minutes are written and just the way things are structured. I did, because it's certainly one of the biggest votes that we do is look at the budget votes. And you can read this particular status, lots of different ways, this particular data point, lots of different ways. The only unanimous votes on the town budget between 2010 and the present happened twice under a 40-member body. At no time during the 50-member body during that period of time. So I would say there's an argument to be made that that's consensus building, that you got it 40 people with less members. And is that a really good thing when you've built consensus and it's passed unanimously? You can make that interpretation. So, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of data. We did our best to address his specific questions. We wanted to be able to answer this, for the public. And, I certainly have been very vocal on the record about why I think this is good governance for Fairfield. It doesn't diminish anybody's personal contribution to the RTM. I've worked with many varied people who have been wonderful and contribute quite a bit. But I do think that it's time for a re-examination, and this is an opportunity to do that. So thank you for your patience and listening to that. I know that Selectman Flynn is listening. Hopefully this information is helpful to him. And I do very much, on a personal note, just want to say that I respect very much what Selectman Lefkowitz said yesterday when she was finished speaking, and that she simply said this might be a difference of philosophical opinion, and I respect that. So here's the data, here's the information, and, just put that out there. John, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, well said. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is very comprehensive, and appreciate the two of you doing that. I think it does kind of, fill in some holes and gaps. People have been asking for a little more detail as to why this has been suggested, and it does analyze that further. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have comments on this?
Is it okay if I use that for my next term?
Sure, I have all these charts now. They're all. I said I could go to work as a researcher for Attorney Mendick.
Thank you, great work.
So there's a lot here to digest, and I would ask the indulgence of the commission if they wouldn't mind putting off a consensus on this number until Monday, just so we can kind of go through and see, this has been helpful, but I think people could take some time and take another look at it and maybe rethink things in light of it. But I know we've had a lot of discussion about it, but it would be the last remaining item that we would take up on Monday, and then obviously with the entire document. Is there any objection to that? Okay. Any other, so just a timeline? I mean, I would get to next steps.
Jim and I have a few things to do on the budget. I don't know what his availability is tomorrow morning. We'll talk in the morning. My hope would be to have it to you by the end of the day tomorrow.
Okay.
So you have a full weekend to look at it, and we'll have it posted as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yes.
So the public gets.
They had ruined our weekend.
Yeah, it's not that much.
Yeah.
Something to do when you're sitting by the pool.
Yeah.
Can you FedEx me a hard copy then?
Well,
I'm teasing.
I know. Well, if you have a pool, I'll bring it down to your pool.
Yeah.
I've got a charter meeting in Hampton on all Saturday, so I gotta get this done tomorrow. Great.
Okay, so anything else from the commission? All right, then we will pick up on Monday, and we'll hear from you tomorrow. We'll look for the email. What's that? I do. Is there a second to the motion to adjourn? Mr. Brogan, all those in favor? Aye. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you for our
You're welcome.